I mean, he's already taken the next step, right? This is Anotand's best performance in a S tier tournament to date. It's his biggest crowning achievement. But of course, you always just really want that crown. And, it's kind of crazy the way things have been playing out in that lower bracket. I mean, yesterday we did see Vortex versus Beasty, an interesting series, considering that they are actually scrim partners, a secret that got broke to us on the previous broadcast. And well, the outcome may be a little bit less close than I think maybe some people were expecting with that information in mind. It makes you wonder, who has Beastie been practicing with extra on the side to get a leg up over his go-to grind part?
Well, we might be in for a long day here, KP, because we have a best of 7 coming up here in the lower bracket finals, and then a potential best of 9 in the grand finals. And we're kicking this off with Cliffside Byzantines versus Jeanne d'Arc. A lot of land maps here in this draft. Looks like we're not going to have much of those hybrid map shenanigans. And one thing I'm looking at, KP, is that we have a lot of these heavily sectioned off maps in the map pool. Cliffside, Hillandale, King of the Hill. Something that could allow either of these players to just slow down the game a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, well, King of the Hill, you say slow down, it kind of just speeds up. It usually is pro scouts into rushing the top. A little bit different to what we saw, back in the old Elite Classics, where it was actually just get the Castle Age defensive landmark, aka pick English, and win the game. Doesn't really work that way as much anymore. Still becomes about it, just a different way. But yeah, definitely Hillandale. We've seen that's the type of map that can drag games. Four Lakes provides a lot of safety for your food. But then you've got the exposed maps, Baldland, Dry Arabia, Gorge, especially with the Season 9 walling changes, can be a little bit more of a drag out. It's not simply, let me just wall the entire map and let's have a 2-hour game. So keeping these two in mind, the way that Anotand likes to play, I'm imagining we're going to be looking at him slamming it out of the gates, and this newfound Beastie with his aggression could look to match that pace. You know what? I think it's about time. The clock has hit 0. Ding, ding goes the bell. It's time to be welcomed to the ball for a grand final showdown Sunday. We have the lower bracket finals to see who will be going up against Marine Lord. Beastie kicking the series off in the red with Jeanne d'Arc. Anotand, the Fox clan, playing as the Byzantines.
As you mentioned in the pregame, KP, Anotand, one of his best ever tournament performances out there, but he's now facing a whole new beast out here. 6-2 is Beastie's record so far against Anotand across the last 2 years. But this is a big thing for Anotand. This wouldn't be the first time he beats Beastie. So he has done it before. Can he do it on the biggest stage? That's the big question.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the games won in those series, wasn't it something like 14-6, for example? It's crazy. Think about it this way. Look at the positives, right? Like against Marine Lord, Anotand had only ever got one game and had something like double-digit losses. Well, yesterday he got at least one game off of him, right? So he doubled his count there. Now, by my math, if we were at like 6 wins overall, he doubles his count here. That would give him the win over Beastie. So there's definitely some hope. The Byzantine-Jeanne matchup is kind of an interesting one. In the current meta, Jeanne, while not an S-tier pro scout civ, she is a good pro scout civ. Byzantines are not. So on a map like Cliffside in particular, I'd imagine the Byzantines would try to maybe take a more aggressive line. It's just very risky with Jeanne in motion. The only exception being is when someone sneezes, misclicks, and ticks range Jeanne.
Well, you never say never. We've seen some ranged Jeannes across the board in this tournament, and even back in the past. But for now, KP, one thing I'm looking at is this backside gold and backside stone as well for Beasties. We do have the nice little sheep counter right here. So far, no advantage on either side. I just want to highlight that we have a very nice French flag in the sheep counters, so it kind of synergizes with the Jeanne d'Arc pick. Okay, there we go.
Not anymore, we don't. Now we have... Is that even a flag? Flag
I don't think so.
Rise up, please. Now it's a different flag. We're getting confused by this. I mean, by the way, big shout out to production. I don't know if you guys know, but the way that you get the sheep count like this is basically Vodka has to, at the speed of light, rush around the map, clicking every single sheep that exists. And then he has to relay that to the back team. It's very complicated.
Yeah, really, the production team, I think this is a good time to give a great shout out to them because they really upped their game. Across the whole tournament, you have the little sister indicator to the right. And all these little additions, they take a lot of work for these guys to implement, and they've done a really masterful job just upping the quality of these broadcasts and making sure that you really get all the information that you would want.
Exactly. And I'm not actually sure if that's how they get all the sheep count by selecting individually. I'm just guessing. That's how I'd have to do it. They'd probably come up with more an elegant solution. But so let's talk a little bit about what we expect to see here. So we've got ground warrior, we've got school of cavalry, everything standard. Now, we did talk about range on a little bit earlier. There's a reason why you don't typically do range on in this matchup. There's a reason why it usually gets you killed. Javelins. Any Civ that has access to javelins is your worst nightmare if you go range on. So if Beasty did want to get range on, which can be beneficial against turtling opponents, you need to wait until your opponents had mercenary choices made. The issue is twofold though, right? For a start, do you really want to wait and miss out on additional XP? No. The other issue is you don't know what the Byzantines have picked until the first troops come out, which is even further in the game, right? So likely for safety, I'd imagine Beasty maybe just goes melee mode here. Or he goes range, does like a little bit of tickle damage, and then falls back for some sort of greedy play.
Yep, that's a great point that you bring up. I would assume that he was going to go melee as well. Just a standard slowish start. Just as a side note here, we've actually witnessed Anotand being able to take away most of the sheep that spawn close to Beasty's base. Of course, hunt is going to be a big thing. Berries will be a huge thing as well for Anotand, but we always like to highlight this extra boost you're getting from just being able to collect some extra sheep. And if you're Beasty and you're the French, you're making very food-heavy units to the Knights, it's going to be a factor once you start running out of those deer carcasses.
Oh, there's a lot of deer to get through, though, right? And looking at the spawn, this is kind of what you want when you're going up against an infantry civ. Is a widespread, right? He's got like 3 options available to him. Best thing Anna could do is try to shove this away a bit, but unfortunately, when you're up against the pro scouts and they're pumping out scouts this quickly, you can't hang around to be a nuisance. The interesting part about Beasty's build is that there's 2 ways to play this. Basically, you can go 1 knight, then scouts, or you go straight scouts. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go for that 1 knight, because I definitely think on a map like this, you can find value, or rather against a civ like this, right? Because normally, a civ you're attacking, there's gold or wood to attack. When it's Byzantines, there's food as well, because they have to go out for the berries.
And Anotand knew that. He actually dropped the tower close to the berries and the gold, so he was concerned about some early aggression coming his way. There is no knights out just yet. So for Anotand, he's going to open the Limitane, trying to deny the carcasses, and there is the swordswoman Jean. So no surprise on that front. Anotand isn't going to have the tools to deal with that just now.
Yeah, and well, you know, the reason why we call it woman arms is because I'd need to drink 5 woo-woos to feel good about this choice. It's kind of weird. We started off with melee Jean always feeling great, and I feel like most matchups now you're trying to find your way to range Jean. The problem is, like, against Byzantines, it's too organic. Limitane almost guarantees javelins. What would be sick here from Anotand is if he'd done something different, like Lombos, but considering he probably sees his win condition as Castle Age, there's not much value in going for the LBs. You'd rather have the potential for a few camels against the potential of max knights from Jean.
Yeah, camels would be really, really good here, because across this tournament, we've seen both French and Jean being played in a super knight-heavy fashion. There were games where it was all knights, knights, and knights. There were games where the French player or Jeanne d'Arc did not make any other unit but knights.
So just
as a side note,
explain that build to me. So you start knights,
and then you go knights.
Oh, okay, and then
you go knights.
Wow, and finally.
Finally, do you die to mass spearmen, which actually happened a couple of times.
I mean, it's kind of hilarious how the deeper we get into Age of Empires 4 and how we're like, wow, all these iterative strategies. For Jean and French, a lot of the time, it still is just one knight coming out and then another one. Never really changes. But, you know, with the potency around that Royal Institute build, kind of not surprising. This time, it is going to be archers plus the knights. This guarantees Anno should be looking for javelins. Question mark is, what does Beasty see as his win condition here? Is it just a poke, harass, and look for a tech with 10 plus knights? Or is this going to be an all-in force the feudal commitment?
I would think that he was going to play this a little slower, simply because he's not super committing into knights right now. He doesn't have a single knight in queue right now, for instance. He had this one banged up pretty badly as well. So I would wager that he was going to play a slightly slower game. I could see him kind of poking around with the knights in feudal, and then just trying to build up that knight mass, going into castle, get the Royal Institute. That could be a reasonable win condition for him. I do want to give him a big shout out, though, because he's been very smart with the use of those scouts. His initial deer pack that he wanted to take with the pro scouts was kind of harassed by the Limitani, so he went north and he took a bunch of deer from Anotand. So far, these scouts have not been idled whatsoever by any of those Limitani.
Nah, and good job by Anno in return as well, right? Like, not just idling his Limitane to be a threat, he used them to then take deer off the map, shoving it closer to his base. Sometimes you see people open Limitane like this, but because it's knights, they get paranoid. If they're busy running around harassing deer, they might get backstabbed by knights. So good read by him to realize that timing couldn't be there as aggressively. I think it's a little bit different against French. French is more threatening, right? Because by the time they start their tech up, they're 0.6 villages better off. By the time they complete their tech up, they're 2 villages better off because you've already converted one into military.
Most of the javelins are just back at home right now for Anotand, so he's definitely bracing for some sort of an aggression from Beasty, and that aggression might come because now Beasty is committing into army production. He's getting the knights out, he's getting the archers out as well. One big difference, though, is that Beasty also went heavy on the eco upgrades early on. He already has double broadaxe, he's getting the food upgrades, he's got the mining upgrade. Quite a big contrast when you look at Anotand's eco upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, one of them gets the eco upgrades cheaper, right? Is a big part of it. And, you know, the one that might be a little bit surprising is actually at least not having the food upgrade, especially considering that you went for the berries into groves, but the timing would be a little bit off, right? By the time you're kind of thinking of getting it in, you've probably eaten like a third of the berries already, and you're moving across from the sheep. But charge coming in for the knights. Anno, a little bit slow on the pull away there, so first blood drawn, at least when it comes to workers, and every little is going to count here because he needs to slow down that gold in particular. We can see that Anotand is clearly targeting that optimal Castle Age build.
Yeah, this is a big piece of information there for Beasty. Anotand, as you can see, is piling up resources for Castle Age, but the fact that Beasty sees 4 or 5 gold miners out there, that's usually a confirmation for Beasty that his opponent is trying to age up, and fair enough, that's exactly what Anotand is aiming for.
Love this little harassment here, right? Just slowing things down just a little bit. Other interesting thing about melee, John, is against spears, sometimes you can feel good to the cleaves, but Limitane, they have extra health to the point they can like survive an additional cleave, right? So they're a little bit more annoying to run into, so where you have to be a bit careful about where you position her. But Anno, like, we're moments away from the tech up being triggered. Likely we're looking at Golden Horn Tower here. Javelins as the backbone just makes way too much sense. I mean, there isn't really a grand need for Limitane now, considering Beasty only has a total of 6 knights.
Yeah, that's not a lot of knights out there. I actually wonder how many knights Anotand thinks Beasty has, because that's a big thing here, though. It's one thing that Beasty only has 6 knights right now, but if Anotand is concerned that he has more, he's going to have to continue committing into anti-cavalry.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, like, with Byzantines, you're a bit more forgiving on being behind on your transition, right? Because you have the Conscriptio to speed up the production of the units, right? So, like, you can kind of more knee-jerk react to knight spam than other civs who'd have to actively be scanning ahead of time. A little bit of an ambitious move out there by Anno with javelins. Better get back in time. I mean, there's harassment on the front side in terms of idle time, but there's nothing being done to the Golden Horn Tower condition here, so it's like Anotand gets a free pass to the next stage, and Beasty, I'm not entirely convinced if this army is big enough to dive.
Yeah, Anotand doesn't have a lot of gold, though, and if you don't have gold when you hit Castle Age, you're going to struggle getting those techs in, so that's going to be something to look at. Also, villagers on food getting idled out, and a market having been dropped by Anotand makes me feel like he's also concerned about that gold influx.
Yeah, he does need to kind of pivot and adjust here, right? Idle time on the gold again, loses another worker, second one to die this game. Knights are going to have to dive past this. I mean, Beasty, he can't allow the tech up for free. He has to find that punishment point. He has at least stopped many upgrades coming through, but the veterancy is on the way, and that's the win condition for Anotand. It's all about the javelins, not about the Limitane. John is going to get ignored. Backline's going to be focused. Spearmen are trading out well against the Knights. If they can get rid of each other, that leaves just javelins. That is going to be an easy-peasy win for Anno, but it looks like he breaks through a bit too fast. However, doesn't have the power to keep on pushing here, so we'll have to leave. Reasonable damage done, 3 worker kills as well, but the reality check at the end of the day is Beasty is still stuck in the second age.
Yeah, most of the Knights get out there alive, and that's a big thing for Beasty. He still has 7 Knights out there. Most of the Limitani are now gone, but at the same time, Anotand was idled quite a bit. He had some workers killed as well, and he doesn't really have a lot of anti-cavalry right now. He still has 8 Knights to kill, and he only has javelin throwers right now. He's remassing the Limitani. He's getting the first catapract out there, but that gold influx is just so bad right now.
Yeah, and you know, upside for Beasty, we are 2/3 or 3/4 rather the way of having Jean to level 3, right? Really big deal there, because you know you probably still want to build Limitane, but you basically got drained of them all. Harassment again on that gold line though. The jabs are now upgraded, right? But the problem here is with a lack of Limitane, Anotand can't posture too aggressively. He has to show a lot of respect to his counterpart.
Yeah, one thing I'm looking at with Cliffside every single time we see this map, KP, is that this map has 2 distinct phases. the early game is actually very, very open and fast-paced. Kind of opens up the opportunities for these raids that Beasty is conducting right now. But then late game, once you get those walls going, it suddenly becomes a very like entrenched and slow-paced map, something that favors civs like the English, for instance. We haven't gotten to that stage yet, and that is something that Anotand is struggling to deal with right now. Beasty's leveraging that mobility really well. Nice little counterattack here by Anotand. Hasn't yet killed the villager, though. It's the first one to fall.
Can't hang around, though. Has to move away. This isn't a sippy cup build. Yeah, a little bit tricky, right? Like, one counter should lose to double Royal Knight. Even if they're in Feudal, like, the damage buff, if you cycle charge, you should fare quite well. But it's going to be a lot better soon for Beastie. Check the XP chart. He should be passively up by about 16.5 minutes. At which time he'll also be in Castle Age. And this, yep, it is going to be a Royal Institute build here. Makes a lot of sense, in particular, when you consider that Anotand is lacking a little when it comes to his spear count.
He is, and in general, that Castle Age timing advantage he had is pretty much gone. Beastie is going to see this expansion gold mine wide open for the Knights to raid. And when you look at Anotand, his army is just not impressive right now. The value is not there. In fact, the army value is twice that. It's a little skewed, I think, because of the mercenaries, but nevertheless, spearmen and javelin throwers are just not good enough when you fight against premium units, Knights supported by archers.
Yeah, like in reality, they're actually quite close in military value. You're right, the javelins are like heavily diluted here. But the problem is, like, Anotand's army isn't designed to get anything done immediately, right? And what Beastie's doing really well, if you check his vision on the map, you'll see he's blocking every route of access. I think Anotand found the one relic which isn't being guarded in the southwest corner. Any other sort of play that would make sense for Byzantines right now simply is being stripped away by Beastie.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up, indeed. Now that Beastie is going into Castle Age, his priorities are shifting. He no longer is pressed to attack, especially having killed 7 villagers across this game. Now, he can just slow things down. He's going for a monastery immediately upon hitting Castle Age. He knows that he can get the majority of the relics, so he's no longer incentivized that much to actually dive Anotand's base.
Yeah, and you know, it's crucial he gets those type of picks, right? Because we have to remember, it's not a raw, 49 versus 49 or whatever it's going to be. Byzantines get that ridiculous buff rate on assistance, right? Which will almost always encompass their economy in the first 20 minutes of the game. Looks like that poor monk, the only one who could maybe find something that Anotand had to look forward to, is going to get denied. And so is this one too. This is getting a bit rough. He will bring the army up.
Oh. Anotand is moving out with his army, and this is something that Beastie spots. He's going to dive immediately. The walls will slow him down here a tiny bit, but that's one of the issues that Anotand is facing. His army is a lot slower than Beastie's, so Beastie can always have this initiative. The moment Anotand moves out of his base, Beastie has an opportunity to dive.
Yeah, I mean, you could pull the archers away and just send the knights in here. It just seems Beastie is just going to back off entirely, happy with the fact that that keeps him back in his base, right? It's not allowing Anotand to march out on the other side of the map, which means that Beastie is getting away with his timings, right? Royal Bloodlines is now coming in. We have the Stilled Arrow level 2 on the way, while Anotand only has level 1. So a lot of big upgrades coming in at this stage for him, and because we have got a Royal Institute play, it's not like Beastie's in an urgent rush to end by 18 minutes, right? He can scale and blob up to 20, 25 knights, contest relics, and then commit for the GG play.
I always like to highlight that Royal Bloodlines takes a lot of time to research, and that leaves you vulnerable as the French. That wasn't the concern for Beastie. He has gotten that upgrade in without having to fight even, and now he's got those fully upgraded knights. Jean is level 3 as well. Camel Riders are slowly coming in here for Anotand, and he's also getting heavy on the Limitani. Keep in mind, Limitani do have the shield wall ability, which makes them a lot more resistant to arrow fire, but you still have to deal with a level 3 Jean, a lot of archers on the other side as well. And Beastie is now scaling his knights very quickly.
Yeah, what would be sick here, we probably won't see it because we've got knights instead, but like in these situations, I think if you're playing a game as Jean and you don't go Royal Institute, Guildhall instead, champions is a serious consideration. Like against Byzantines, right? Because when they build jabs and they build Limitana, they actually have no answer, and specifically champions do counter out Limitana to get bonus damage against spears. So, you know, the reason you won't do it here is although it would be great to deal with the spears, you could theoretically go knights and champions. You then just get countered by crossbows. So that's why it's going to stick on this pump now. We've got Cantled Saddles coming through. It's a humongous damage buff. Guarantees that you go from doing an extra 9 damage in the first 5 seconds of combat to an extra 30 damage per knight. Ridiculous scaling potential there. And Beastie, we even now have the arbitrary switch on the way.
This is a bit of a precarious spot here for Beastie, though. He's being outnumbered very heavily, and he's kind of getting cornered in here. Yeah, Anotand's army is slow.
I think Anotand could split into two. It's a little bit dangerous to Royal Bloodlines. I think that's why
he lost track of them.
Yep, it's good. But he gets baited. I think he saw one knight.
Yeah.
One knight drags him the wrong way. And Beasty's on his way back towards that economy. He gets out of a bind here.
I was gonna say that the only concern for Anotand was that his army is slow moving. He did a really good job cornering Beasty in there, but he lost track of that force, and now he's slow to rotate back. Beasty's looking for targets. Anotand went for a second DC, by the way, so he's trying to drag this game out. Beasty, he is gonna get trapped in here now.
Yeah,
it's gonna be difficult to get out of this base.
Yeah, hanging around to try and burn down the aqueduct may have just actually killed him a little here. Like, if there's villagers waiting on the other side of that wood line, I don't think he gets in. He's trying to make his breakaway here. Limtane, I think he has got the teardrop shields, right? Maybe. So you can just go for the rush. Burnfruit's going to be a little bit tight here. Archers already being a bit exposed. The camels are going to lead in. It looks like the archers are going to have to be left behind. Instead, Beasty may have to just bail with the cavalry. Tries to wrap around the back on the javelins, but the camel riders are there debuffing them. And the Limtane are starting to reach in. Ano, does he have enough here? 14 javelins. Quickly shrinking in count. The spearman is what really matters, and Anotand has plenty of them to follow up with.
And this is not everything that Anotand had. Anotand had to defend on the front because Beasty is sending a second wave. All those lumberjacks are being harassed on the front. Beasty has been killing villagers as well. That's part of the reason why Anotand had to detach some of his forces. In fact, this second wave is looking a lot more devastating than the first one was.
It's the Royal Bloodline effect, right? Like, independently, each of these knights is an absolute nuisance to take down for static defenses for one or two Limitanes. So while it looks like Beasty was losing the game based on that pinch, what he's really doing is just relying on what Jean and French do so well. Raid, raid, raid. And the crazy part is still this arbitrary play. I'm not entirely sold considering you're up against javelins, but he did reduce the count reasonably. The question mark is whether you really want to be here. I think BC's thought process is, if I'm going to be counter with archers, I might as well have arbitrary that have better base damage and, to a certain degree, more flexibility and even an ability to somewhat tank Limitane.
I just want to highlight that Anotand walled in Beasty's scout behind that wood line. That's all I had to say.
I guess he's staying with us now.
The scout actually died, but there was a scout walled in there. By the way, Anotand is bringing back relic number 4, and he's on 2 DCs. So, fair enough, the army counts might be fairly equal, but now Beasty has to start making something happen because he's starting to fall behind in eco quite a bit.
Here comes the men-at-arms play. This is what I was waiting for. In the meantime, you've got to start wondering, is that maybe a little bit too late? There's a flood of Limitane on the way. The backstab's coming through, though, and that's not enough spears to protect. So it looks like the front line is going to get cleared up. Back line melted as well. Anotand may have the eco lead, but he's about to be behind in the military.
Yeah, I feel like he jumped the gun here a little. The camels weren't there to debuff the cavalry, and now I think he moved out with that slow-moving army. Maybe he felt like he needed to do something after losing some eco, but at the same time, he killed 12 villagers. He's killing villagers somewhere. A moment ago, he had like 2 villager kills. Now he's... Where is he killing villagers?
I think it's 16. Pinging originally at the back and it stopped. Like, that's why we can't see on the map.
18!
If we check the berries on the north...
Beasty's losing villagers somewhere.
Wait, no, it's on the left, on the gold. We found the gold in the center. Oh
yeah,
my God,
look at this.
That's ridiculous.
I was gonna say. Anotand was at 1 villager kill a moment ago, and now he's at 21.
So you remember when a long time ago people were like, look, the ping notifications about me getting attacked are too much. Lytical. They need to be nerfed. They need to be... The dev's like, we hear you. It will stop pinging after a while. Turns out that's sometimes a bad thing. Like what just happened there. These camels are still raiding, and they're not usually thought of as a raiding unit with a low 14 base damage, but they're so tanky, they're so fast. They're making the difference here, and now Beasty is truly on the clock. If he can't find a dive point in the next 2 minutes, Anno will now be able to outscale that.
It's crazy, KP. We were just talking about the fact that Anotand might have lost the game with that terrible fight mid-map. Next thing you know, he's not just back in this, he's actually leading in this game. All he needs to do is stall Beasty out a little here. Because now he's got a gigantic eco lead. He has 4 relics compared to 1. A lot of things went right in this game for Anotand. It might not have seemed like it, but when the dust settles, he's in a really good position right now. He still needs to survive a push with 15 knights and 10 men-at-arms as well. He doesn't have a lot of armor-piercing power.
It's been rescaling, but we have the infamous Mango Tower, which is pretty much all you ever need. This thing feels unkillable and definitely is worth the pay of entry. This thing can easily clear up that backline if he goes after Arbitrary, but instead, just kind of flooring shots around. The men-at-arms line is doing an okay job. The problem is there's still camels, right? So Beasty unable to commit with the knights. And standing here definitely doesn't feel like a winning solution right now. He needs to dive or leave.
Yeah, the Mangonel Tower is getting some really good shots on those knights. They're super tanky, but they're slowly getting cleaned up. A lot of the knights are heavily beaten up. Camels, horsemen now coming in to flank, and I think Anotand might have enough to hold this. Jean coming in with the heals. Remember, Beasty cannot rebuild his army. Anotand is fine with a trade here, because Beasty doesn't have a lot of resources and eco to work with.
Yeah, he just kind of threw away the javelins, though, which is a little bit questionable here. Starts to back up. I mean, there's not much of an army left, so I think, I know in some ways he over-focused on the knights, but because he thought those are the things that will kill me, right? They can dive. Realistically, those mango towers could have done a lot more damage taking out the arbitrary first in that engagement, and then addressing the knights afterwards.
And Beasty still has a bunch of men-at-arms and knights. A lot of the knights are heavily beaten up, but they are still alive and he can heal them back up. Anotand, again, he just needs to weather the storm and he's going to be in a great position, but it's going to be so difficult withstanding this attack. The army value discrepancy is massive. Yeah. And you cannot even say, oh, it's because the mercenaries aren't shown. It's not like Anotand has a lot of mercenaries right now.
But, well, you know, while we might have a lot of mercenaries with the Byzantines, apparently Lubu's warhorse is on offer, because if you look at that XP bar, Beasty's about to upgrade to something shinier, okay? We're about to go full mecha form here. The red hair is going to arrive. That's about, like, what, 100, 150 XP away? That's just a few camel kills. If that comes in, Beasty still has a timing. It's kind of crazy that he's not dead yet in this game.
I don't know if there's a third layer behind this. This might be the final hurrah. If this gets stalled out, it might be it. But
no.
It's going to be so damn difficult.
Think about it, right? Rams are going to suck at taking out this Mango Tower. I've seen it before, right? A Ram versus a Mango Tower almost wins on its own, right? This is hard. But as soon as you get level 4 and birth a cannon, the standard defense starts to fail you. Arbitrary, once again unharassed. They get the Pavis drop. They start to line up their shots. And there it is. Jean de Blast activated here. Beasty has reached his final form. Valorous Inspiration gets activated. Anotand's front line is failing him. Despite what looked like an in-the-bag economical lead, Beasty says no.
It is crazy. And the Knights were fighting the Limitani all along. A lot of the Knights just got butchered by all those Limitani, but the bad fights that Anotand has been taking across this game are now haunting him. He lost his big ball of infantry so many times, especially once in that mid-map. Those raids got him back into the game, but now his position is precarious. His eco is still there, but he somehow needs to find a way to clean this up. Beasty's basically all-inning this, and Anotand knows it. He's trying to get rid of the Rams no matter the cost.
Nah, it's going to cost him. Jean de Cleve could just wipe those villages, and the smirk is white from his face. Anotand unable to come through in the first game. Byzantines falling to the might of Beasty's Jean d'Arc.
What a game. I honestly had moments where I had no idea what's going to happen.
That's the way I want it, man. That's the way you always want Age of Empires to be.
It looked like a clean Beasty game. Then, Anotand somehow comes away with 4 relics, gets a second TC going, and absolutely obliterates Beasty's eco. Minute 22, suddenly it feels like Anotand is in a really good spot, if only he can hold off one final assault from Beasty. But then again, Beasty just says, okay, my only win condition is to finish the game right here, right now, and he did just that. We always talk about Beasty being a really good defender as a player. I think in this game he has shown that when he needs to be, he is also a really good attacker.
I think, you know, this goes to the credence and the praise of like having a meta that evolves and why it's so important. Even especially having patches that force that evolution regularly. Is like, you know, right now we heard it in interviews the other day that we're currently in like a meta that no one's quite sure what exactly the meta is, right? So you've got a lot of scratching the heads, but at the highest level that means having to adapt on the fly, not necessarily having the elegant plan that's going to execute perfectly for 30 minutes. And you know what we really learned in this particular game, Lidicor, is actually yellow's OP. Right? Because that gold vein is what you were getting at. That's the thing that made what was a game that looked like it was going to be tight and then BC maybe still ahead. It all of a sudden made him look dead. Is yellow on gold was not viewable at all.
This fight basically have lost the game for Anotand. But when you look at the bottom left of the screen, while this is happening, he's killing villagers on that gold mine, and that's not something that Beasty noticed. If it wasn't for those villager kills, this game would have been over right in the middle. But with those villager kills, Anotand put himself into a really good spot economically, but holding this assault off was just a too big ask of him. He never was able to remass that army after having lost it in the middle of the map.
No, and I think for a start, like allowing the arbitrary account to still be this high, that Mango Tower could have been targeting the whole time. Other play for Anotand, like seeing how well the Mango Towers are doing, right? Temptation should be to just add in additionals there. It allows you to actually force your opponent to dive into them, because even if you get rams in on these towers, 1750 HP. They don't actually die as quickly as you'd think. So unfortunately, wasn't able to maybe leverage that a little bit stronger defense, but you can't take anything away from Beasty, man. He pressured. When he saw weakness, he made sure he stuck to understanding that if this turned it into an eco race, he was going to be behind. And when we look forward to what's coming next, we've got a crazy matchup to continue. Like this one already started the series delivering in style. Historically, Four Lakes, Japanese and Abo is usually one of the more fun matchups to watch. It feels like one side should have an advantage for the Shinobi. In previous times, the Camels have been just as lethal. So curious to see how both will approach this one.
I agree with you. I think Japanese is your classic pick here. It is truly one of those, okay, I know what you're going to do. I have a powerful tool to shut down your early game economy. How is that going to work?
Yeah, and like there's a few different shenanigans you can do. I think in the more recent meta, we don't really see people trying the sneaky dock drops as much anymore. It almost feels like most games, because people figured out the timings on these type of civs, you just get one side, you get the other, and then you kind of split the map and go for castle. The interesting thing here is like Japan's goal historically has been to rush that castle. However, if you start scaling camel archers very early as Abbasids, you don't just get crumpled. You can chill for a very long time and be pretty content with the state of things.
Now, it's time for Four Lakes though, KP. 1-0 for Beasty, and this is a map that he absolutely loves playing on. He is not really known as the water or hybrid map style player, but Four Lakes has historically been a Beasty map for quite some time. We head into game number 2, Four Lakes, Japanese versus the Abbasids.
Oh, yes. This should be a fun one, a classic from the ladder. I feel like this is one of the most popular matchups. So Anotand is going to be on the Japanese in this one. Beasty to the Abbasids. If you were thinking big macro plans, it makes sense. Beasty is historically more of a macro defender player. You see Abbasids that way. But I see potential aggression here. And I'm curious to see how both want to try and approach this, especially seeing as we haven't seen it too often in recent times, right? I think ever since the Camel Archer's slight nerf, the Eco Wing changes, I personally just haven't seen as much for especially in competitive play.
Yeah, I think the big question mark when it comes to Beasty is, and in general the Abbasids, is timings and the ability to deal with the early aggression. Because you can expect Shinobi to come out from Anotand. You can expect the Mounted Samurai to come out. The question is whether Beasty can match those timings. If he goes for a military wing to open with, Archers will be able to deal in combination with the Spearman with the initial 1 or maybe 2 Shinobi. Then you have to deal with that Castle Age timing of the Japanese and get something out against all those Mounted Samurai. Maybe you're thinking Camels. Do you have the timing for it?
I mean, Camel Archers, they're definitely not the quickest thing to come out. The cool thing about Four Lakes, I think, makes it a bit easier for Abbasids, is obviously if you're going double dock, you're saving 150 wood already to set up the archer range. It's not always guaranteed to feel good, though, considering the Japanese get so many cheap fishing boats to pump out, right? Like, we could easily see 12 fishing boats per pond. That's a pretty ludicrous saving, actually. That ends up being, 960 wood save for the Japanese. It's kind of hard to match as time goes on. But I think for this matchup, BC's probably going to want to try and be somewhat present and aggressive. The cool thing about going Camel Archers as well is, considering most Japanese players go for the Koka, well, Camels do counter Shinobi, right? Like, you have to be careful of the Shinshin, admittedly, but you do get double damage against them.
Nice sheep.
You know what? That is pretty nice sheep. But I have fish, so I don't care.
Fair enough. Always a good fallback option, but it's a way less relevant on this map. And now we have a villager countdown at the top, counter as well at the top. So once again, big shout out to the production team for putting all these little extras together for us, so we have a nice viewing experience. One thing I'm looking at here are the gold spots, KP, because those have not been forgiving for either of these players. Anotand has all 3 of his gold spots clustered up right next to one another, difficult to defend. And when you look at Beasty, 2 of his gold spots are pretty far away from his starting spot, and the 3rd one is kind of out in the open down south of his DC.
Yeah, usually when you're against the potential camel archers, it's usually worth just an outpost investment. I don't expect Anno to rush it, but if he does see his opponent starting to build military units, he'll look to get that up ASAP. I mean, feels kind of mandatory, right? Nice thing at least about that east side, or west side of gold, is if you go for the second dock, you can basically just build it right next to the gold, and then that gives you a little bit of scout vision. If you have to build an archer ship, it kind of feels like it's better value because it can somewhat protect the vein as well. Like, realistically, that shouldn't happen anytime soon. If you have to go that far out for gold, your plan has already been thrown off the road a bit.
It's the Coca Township coming in here for Anotand. No surprise on that front. Rushing it up with 6 villagers, so quite a rush towards Feudal Age. Also having dropped it right next to the TC, so he just pulled the villagers off the sheep, drops it immediately. It's a very clear sign that Anotand is trying to rush Feudal as much as possible. Each of our Beastie is going to come through the culture wing, but because he's playing the Abbasids, he isn't able to really rush this at this point.
Yeah, so culture wing, I mean, it could just be the fast castle plan, right? He doesn't want to play the camel strategy. But the other interesting thing is culture wing used to feel really good for the Irish Let's Play. That play doesn't make much sense on this particular map. It's much better on maps like, for example, Canal. So I think this is just strictly about getting Castle Age as quickly and optimally as possible for him and getting as many savings along the way as he possibly can.
Fair point.
We have a sneaky goose. I don't think he was seen either. We check Beasty's vision. Like, last time we saw 4 Lakes in competitive, I think it was before they nerfed the fishing boat vision a little. So it's a little bit harder to see these villagers sneaking in early.
Yeah, and Beasty was pulling a villager as well. Decides to change his mind and goes back home. But yeah, you see Beasty's scout is right next to Anotand's base. He is going to send a fishing boat out now, but by the time he arrives, he's going to just learn about the fact that the dock is there. It's not like he had the tools to stop it anyways, but at least he's going to be aware.
Uh-oh. Yeah, so he done the classic where you just pull a fishing boat wide, so you kind of get a sub-efficiency, but you do get the vision. Really important as well. Really cool play that Anotand can do in response if he's ever paranoid about this similar type of dot play. Like, Japanese players are a bit better at scouting these plays on 4 Lakes against them because they can place farmhouses along the shoreline, right? So they can see things coming. But you know, the important part is he now knows Beasty can react accordingly. Anno does have the archer ship out first. Beasty, understand that, has already queued up the Spring ship, and most importantly, he has that second dock. So this first one is a bait to waste the Shinobi's sabotage.
Yeah, that's the big thing here, KP. You need 2 docks because 1 dock can easily be shut down by the Shinobi. But Anotand isn't taking the bait. He knows it fully well.
And remember, he's got a second Shinobi here. Like, he can actually block out both docks because the second Shinobi just arrived. Like, this is now kind of a snowball effect. You keep vomiting them out. In theory, you can block out indefinitely, but there was a little bit of a stopgap. I don't think Anotand was priming the 3rd Shinobi quick enough here. So there will be a small window, which will allow Beasty to get the Spring ship out.
Yeah, Beasty is going to get that first ship out from the initial dock that he started building it on. But just talk about the little, roll of a dice here to a certain extent by Anotand. He said, okay, I know that the ship is coming out from that dock and not the first one. It was, 50-50. To a certain extent, a roll of a dice, and he gambled well.
So this is when the classic, like, you need to be so big brain that like, your brain looks small, but it's actually big, right? So, like, you got to look at that play and go, oh, you see me do this? So he's assuming it's going to come out of this dock, so I'll place it the other. The reason he didn't is the second Shinobi would always guarantee both get blocked. But he does at least get the Spring out in the end, like we talked about. That small gap arrived. We have a demo ship follow-up from Beasty as well, so just trying to get that next step ahead. And Anno, he is actually playing into this pond further. I thought he just used this as like a bait and an overcommitment. He really wants to win this pond.
Yeah, he's heavy on the Shinobi. He's trying to take out these docks. And in fact, he's prioritizing the Shinobi over combat ships. You see, he's just now getting his first trio of ships out. He definitely slowed down in terms of ship production after that galley.
Wait. He could get both docks here. Like, how does Beasty get out of repair? Is Shinobi...
He could nuke the fishing boats with the demo.
I mean, I think you get rid of the boats first. The military boats is more important, right? Because both those docks are a death's door. Get to pull villages. You're seeing him do it right now, but this is not safe against Shinobi. Shooting away, he goes a little bit deeper. Demo connection is good from Beasty. Gets as much damage as he could, but the return fire even more impactful. He needs to finish that one off, though. Torches are being held on. The Shinobi are the ones trying to clear the Spriggle chip. But they're not going to be able to. The villager gets a little bit of repair through the demo. Comes short of the mark there. And the Spriggle stays alive.
Small differences make the mile, and Beasty is coming in clutch with these key pieces of micro.
What just happened?
Anotand could have won the game there.
I know.
But now...
I feel like both of them were in a panic there, right? Like the demo ships were a little bit subpar in some ways. We had a demo ship basically trying to take out an archer ship there. The crazy thing is after all of that back and forward skirmishing, somehow Beasty sells a dock, and not just that, he's the first one to trigger Castle Edge.
It's unbelievable. Again, small differences make the mile, and that galley popping out for Beasty just when the second demo was arriving, it saves the bug law. A couple of fishing boats were lost, and because Anotand decided to commit the Shinobi died, so they cannot deny this dock anymore. Beasty pulls a villager to repair, and when the dust settles, Beasty has a full HP dock to work with, and still has a couple of boats out there. Anotand, in the meantime, we talked about this, KP, he committed very heavily into the Shinobi. All the Shinobi are now gone. He is going to age up soon, and I think he's going to match Beasty's Castle Age timing. But crucially, he's not going to have an advantage going into Castle Age.
No, because Anotand is playing double pond here. He's moved out to the west side. Triple pond in a way when you think about it, right? Like, obviously, he's not going to try to contest this too far. He just wants to stop Beasty from gathering. And all of a sudden, you mentioned it earlier on, the sheep sometimes can matter. It's going to be Beasty's only lifeline here when he gets pushed off that pond. So kind of critical he holds on as long as he can. We do have double stables being produced, which means Beasty should be going into mass camo riders here. Smart idea into the classic mounted samurai strat.
Yeah, Beasty's super heavy on gold here, and Anotand is so slow aging up. He didn't have a good food income, which was just like 400 or so per minute. So he's not even going to match Beasty's Castle Age timing. He is going to get beaten to Castle Age, which just looks so grim. It's all about the timing of these mounted samurai. If you have the numbers advantage, you can potentially fight into camels, but if the camels come out early, you're just not going to have that raw power. And now Anotand is getting cleaned up on this pond as well.
Well, you say that. He's holding on a little bit longer, actually. The archer ship tanked the demo detonation there. But, oh, for God's sake! He was going to hold on longer. That's another demo ship with giant question marks around it. And that's crazy. Beasty, I thought it was just going to be him trying to camel spam. I guess he wants at least a few lances to raid with. A little bit risky into Japanese, right? Because they can get the mounted samurai much better. The timing is just odd here. Like, Anotand done a few weird things. If you look at his south corner pond, because this one's now done, you'll notice he's not deep watering. He's shoreline fishing.
Wow. I wonder if it was an initial thing in Dark Age to just shorten the distance and say, okay, my fishing boats will not bump into one another, but some weird things happen there, and I don't know if Beasty would have gone for Knights if Anotand matched his Castle Edge timing. I think Beasty might be like, wait a minute, he's not in Castle, I'm just going to go Knights, he's not going to have mounted Samurai anyways.
No, can we check Anotand's vision? Something very important on my mind here. Because, okay, so he did scout one of the deep waters in the other pond. Right, because at first I thought, is this just like auto rally behavior? Like, you know, the fishing boats clear the deep water, and I mean, I think you have to manually do that still anyways. But I'm a little bit puzzled, right? Like, I get it when the deep water runs out, you're like, oh, okay, I don't, you know, I'll just go shoreline for the time being. But to stay there the entire time is kind of crazy. And now we do have additional lances on the way. I mean, Beasty, he is going to be playing an amount of samurai. This should feel bad. What would have felt worse is if Anotand knew this was coming and had gone to own a Musha instead.
Camels, only 2 camels out there, but it's enough to debuff the mounted samurai. What's worrisome for Anotand really is that initially he's going to be out-muscled in raw numbers. He is getting the relics in though, and we've seen this before, KP, even in the previous game. Things look precarious for him. He's boxed into his own base, and then he somehow finds a way to get something happen. I get the feeling that if he gets a little breathing room here, things could start trending up for him. He's getting the mounted samurai going. Beasty still only has 2 camels. And Anotand is expanding towards that 3rd pond to the north.
I don't know. With the Uma Bannerman here, it's kind of interesting, right? You think the camels are just a nuisance, but the reality is that Uma Bannerman offsets the debuff. You're essentially kind of neck and neck again. And the only difference then is that mounted samurai don't worry about the initial lance charge. Does need to be careful, though. Currently, the count is not in favor of him. We do, however, have that Onimusha switch-up now coming in.
Nice little charges here. He's just trying to take out the camels, and camels aren't super duper tanky here. One of them will fall. Now, Samurai will disengage, wait for the recharge of that protective armor. At the same time, Anotand hasn't yet collected relics, and that's definitely a problem here for him. With this Japanese costless timing, you want to have the relic lead. So far, Beasty has one, Anotand has none.
You can kind of make it acceptable if you keep the food lead, though, right? Like, you know, he's playing multi-pond. In theory, he should feel very good economically, at least, from that side of the painting. We are going to get the chase still on. Looks like the camel does go down. That unlocks the full buff now, so the Uma Bannerman giving the edge over to the Knights of the Japanese. More on the way. Onimusha are arriving, but the crossbows are going to scare him away. Now, this is where the game gets a little bit weird, right? Like, you're on a water map, so Abbasis can afford camels, but more importantly, they can afford crossbows alongside it. Crossbows is kind of just like the anti-Japanese. It's the worst thing they can encounter every time they go up against an opponent.
One thing to highlight, though, is that Anotand now has a substantial eco lead. He's been leveraging those 3 pawns. He's up by 16. Of course, some of that is going to be offset by Beasty's relics. In fact, Beasty is going to have the majority of the relics under his command. But Mounted Samurai are no pushovers. Onimusha are coming in as well. And Anotand is going to have opportunities in this game, I would say. I think right now it's kind of an even-ish game, and Beasty is looking to expand towards this pawn. The galley is out there to say no, but Beasty pulls away the villagers in time.
Yeah, it's like sometimes luck is on your side and you'll get at least one worker kill there because archer ships are a bit RNG. And we have a ram being built by Beasty, so it looks like he's going to try to eventually address the dock on the north side. But the interesting thing here, right, is like Anotand with this much food income, and you're seeing your opponents going into crossbows. You could just sliver in a few horsemen here. It's a bit weird, right? Because like horsemen are going to get debuffed for the camera riders, but it's a clean way of dealing with the expos, and it allows you to kind of just stick on cavalry. So you always just optimize around one Uma Bannerman.
Yeah, that's a great point. Onabugeisha could be an alternative, but that doesn't get buffed by the Uma Bannerman.
Yeah, and you
Anotand is going to have 2 relics, by the way, so he is getting away with a decent haul here, and he's actually getting the Onabugeisha now. Looking to hit this gold mine, thinks twice about it once he sees the crossbows.
I wonder if he thinks his food income is good enough for that. Like, I always find Onabugeisha is like a little bit tricky when you're under 1k food. You don't get that flood timing as quickly. He's actually prepping horsemen, so it looks like this is actually a bait and switch to keep Beasty off of spearmen. Unless he's planning to go full budget comp here, which would be Onabugeisha horseman. Pretty sick one. Used to be really effective in some feudal builds because you just have maximum movement speed out of an infantry cav comp, right? Like the slowest moving unit is 1.5 cars.
The stock is getting taken out here. Not a lot of fishing boats, by the way, so this is more about Beasty getting hold of that pawn rather than taking out the little fishing that Anotand has. Villager tried to just sneak away, but that's not going to happen. Anotand is not getting upgrades for quite a lot of different troops here, so definitely going for a composition, and he's going to hit the woodline of Beasty.
He pokes at it. Doesn't really get too much for. I think he'll want 2 workers there. And the other interesting thing is like Kabutoya is definitely worth it with this many Onimusha. You just pretty much use them as raiding cav instead. We have still got Mounted Samurai raiding as well. Like the game is very uncomfortable with Beasty. You know, Season 8 meta, Beasty would have walled by now. This current meta, it takes so long, and you know you're behind an economy. You can't afford to go do it.
Oh, this is nasty. Beasty is actually falling into the same trap that Anotand fell into in the previous game. Beasty is the player with the slow army, and Anotand is starting to run circles around him. Knights were detached to launch an attack. They ran into Onimusha. And now Anotand is slowly butchering Beasty's cav.
Yeah, Beasty, he didn't pull them any further back, so loses several answers, gets nothing in return. Military numbers now definitely starting to favor Anotand, and the Onabugeisha starting to mount up. I mean, the reality check here is like Onabugeisha actually are like great against everything that Beasty's doing right now. Yes, camels are tanky, but no melee armor unless you go in for the camel shielding. There's so many players to get. And as for crossbows, good luck not getting shredded here. Archers also, if he just retargets, Anotand has to be getting pings about the camels right now. And there you go, he switches over.
Those are villager losses that Beasty cannot afford. He's down by 18, and it's not like he's got a massive relic lead. He's 3-2 in relics, and Anotand has the sacred sites as well. If Anotand keeps up this pressure and just prevents Beasty from having that eco build-up, Beasty's gonna be in a deep deeply, deeply troublesome position here.
Beasty. I mean, the warrior have as well. It's got all these camels, but you know, the longer this game goes, the more camels counter less, right? You were seeing that Anotand's comp. He's only keeping these raiders in the form of knights, right? He's not using them as the main comp. So Beasty is setting himself up for a resounding defeat in the big battle, unless he scouts what is really happening here. And if you check his vision, you'll see a lack of scouting. He doesn't even have a scout to go look with.
And Anotand has a lot of vision. Anotand has multiple towers across the board, and notice that Anotand is hiding a lot of his troops in the stealth forest. He's got 31 Ona Bugeisha, 21 crossbows will not be enough to deal with that. Double Footman Bannerman now as well.
Okay.
So Anotand is definitely making a strong pivot into Ona Bugeisha here, and that's not something that Beasty is really ready for.
Now, we have Golems coming in. This is the solution to the Bugeisha. Another interesting thing, it looks like Beasty did get the camel shielding, right? So he gets +3 melee. Makes you reasonable, actually, into Bugeisha. Still not going to have a great time, but you can test a little bit better. The worry now is, like, we've got Spearman coming in to count the camels. There's still a lot of Onimusha as well, right? Like, my concern is Beasty's crossbows aren't going to survive the first phase of the battle. And without them, you don't really have an answer to Onimusha plus the Ona Bugeisha.
The Ona Bugeisha were scouted by Beasty here, and he's making a pivot into Kulam as well as getting composite bows for the archers. But now Anotand is just waiting for Beasty. He captured both sacred sites, and I think Anotand wants Beasty to commit to a fight. The drawback of this is that he's actually allowing Beasty to build up a decisive force. And right now, I don't think Beasty has an army to beat Anotand's force.
I mean,
that might change in a few minutes.
But at this rate, Anotand could just tech. Right, he's going to clearly reach pop cap much sooner than Beasty is. And Beasty's reluctant to move out and engage, as you highlight, right? Like, he's playing very defensive. We even have additional town centers now.
He's going for a second DC.
Oh.
And that's a bad timing for him.
I know, he's moving. Straight on in. He's got the 4-5 tag trying to help. Mango shots are coming out. There's only one Mango. There's a lot that he needs to deal with. Bugeisha starting to spread out here. Can he hold on with the camels, though? It looks like they're getting shredded a bit too fast. The Golem line also starting to get targeted down, and now on a delay, the mounted samurai arrive. Beasty, half of his army in crossbows, and means he hasn't got enough to hold on. Anotand swiftly striking back.
And we talked about this, KP, in a previous game as well. Anotand had some really good moments here. And let's look back at that one catastrophic fight on Beasty spawn for Anotand. It seemed like all was lost after that complete disaster, but then things started to fall into the favor of Anotand once again. He was able to get 2 out of 5 relics despite not having a lot of initial map control. The build-up was a lot more rapid. He was able to leverage the pawns as well, and next thing you know, he's back in this series. And based on what we've seen in the first 2 games, this could easily be a tightly contested series.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like, this game probably should have been over at, like, 8 or 9 minutes in, right? Like, with the way this game opened, honestly, I think it's impressive Beasty survived this long. That opening skirmish on the east side pond feels almost decisive, right? But, like, Anotand maybe skimps on the micro a little bit. His shinobi relate to attack on the springwood ship. His demo ships weren't quick to react. Beasty's micro was very on point with how he was using the demo ships to waste shots. That was the difference maker that actually even made this game compete that deep in. So shows you that Beasty is still that classic, you know, might be down but not out, and somehow starts to pull off miracles. But Anotand, critically important to just emphasize how well played this was outside of that little kabunga bunga on the pond. I think that's the correct term for it. You need something that sounds a little bit silly, because this was a clown show.
Yeah, this was... If you... Like, you look at the screen, and you have to express what's the worst case scenario. Well, that is exactly what happened.
like the demo basically counter demos 2 and almost kills an archer ship. And then this, like, there was a delay. You saw the shinobi running by, right? Like, there was a small window there where I think the torches could have actually killed that springwood. And that was so painful, man. Ship comes, oh, hey, look at that. I'm still alive.
It reminds me to shooter games when you're like 1 in 16 in your KD and you're like, okay, I'm just going to dump the whole magazine into my opponent, and it's still not working because you just get headshot immediately. That's what this felt like. It's like, oh, that ship is almost dead. Let's pull the shinobi to kill it, and then the shinobi get butchered, and you're just like, oh, come on, this couldn't have been any worse.
Let me put it a better way, right? It's like when I'm playing Apex Legends and I'm like, yeah, the one hit. I'm actually lying. I done 40 damage. They've still got 150 health left. But my 2 teammates run around the corner and just get mowed down. It kind of felt more like that. Just baits him into it.
I can sense that, where it's like, you say in a team chat, oh, he's one shot. And like, well, I didn't really do a lot of damage, but I can't tell my teammates that I'm just garbage, right?
but that works on every single game, Lidicor. When you're playing team games of Age of Empires 4, right, and you go in and you lose all your knights, you go, yeah, he's almost dead, he's almost dead, he's almost... And all your teammates flood in. Now, it might fail, but if it fails, you get to your next game quicker, right? Because you're now dead, you lost your 20 knights. If it works, team... Hoorah! I don't know what you want to say in that situation. We're moving to King of the Hill next. And this is an interesting one. We've got a classic King of the Hill in Chinese. But Order of the Dragon have been surprising quite a lot of people at the moment, Lidicor.
Interesting pick here. And, you know, we haven't seen King of the Hill in a competitive setting for quite some time. But back in the days, King of the Hill was characterized by this timing, in a sense. You want to grab the middle. It's almost an all-in style map. Some people hate it, some people love it. One thing is sure, it's one of those maps where you go in and you could have a nail biter on your hands. And I just want to say, on a map like this, a Burgrave Palace for the Order of the Dragon could be an immensely valuable asset. So it's definitely one of those things that could play into some of the strengths that the Order of the Dragon have.
Well, I'll say this much of it. Someone will be king of that hill and someone will be leading in this series, right? Because we are drawn up. We're getting a little bit of distance in this, but this really is the battle of the old school versus the new. Now, Barbican rushes in the center have kind of fallen off. The Imperial Academy is just too damn good. The question mark is what the Order of the Dragon wants to do here. After, of course, an obligatory opening phase of Pro Scouts, because I'm going to guarantee you right now, Lidicor, both of these civs are going to Pro Scouts.
I'm not so sure about the Order of the Dragon, but let's see. It's game number 3 coming up. Anotand and Beasty, one apiece. We head to King of the Hill for game number 3.
Here we go, hopping into really a classic king of this map in the hands of Beasty. But the new kid on the block, Order of the Dragon, and the new kid himself, Anotand, wielding them. You got to ask, what have they got in mind for this particular matchup? Because I think a lot of people have been getting shocked very quickly about OTD and matchups they can win. And you know, we have to be real about this. Beasty is a player by his own admission has been catching up on the meta in the last few weeks. Could Anotand slip through a crazy new build on us on an unfamiliar map, considering you can't grind this on the ladder?
This map takes me back to the early days of competitive AoE 4 KP. It's back in the days when you didn't have custom maps. It's crazy to say, but there was an era where you couldn't just do map scripts. And in that period, we were just forced to play some of these maps because there were no alternatives, and that's where King of the Hill was a frequent visitor to the competitive setting. Only one sacred site in the middle. A lot of aggressive fighting potentially happening for that. One thing I'm looking for, though, is that middle sacred site is rather open from the south, so it's not one of those classic King of the Hill setups where you have some narrow funnel points. There are multiple angles for either of these players to potentially aggress this sacred site from.
Yeah, and you know, one thing to keep in mind is like the deer, just look at it, right? It's just all too delectable, too tasty, too desirable here. I mean, we even have Beasty going for a double scout opener, which is a little bit crazy. I can back it, though. I think it makes sense here. On this particular map, like, you're just going to linearize the map and turn it into 2/3 for you. And then that guarantees that Anotand has to go Pro Scouts or run out of food, right? And that means you're going Pro Scouts against, like, the king of Pro Scouting right now, right? China and Zhuji, nobody gets it quicker than them.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see a boar play from either side, though. Because this is definitely one of those maps where it's not difficult to wall off the flanks, even after the nerfs to the walling. So you could technically justify getting your flanks walled off and going out for the boar, especially if you are Anotand. Beasty's boar is a little out in the open, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to wall that off. But for now, Minework Palace for Anotand.
Yeah, Fudge going anywhere near that boar. You know what this is probably going to be, Lidicor. Did someone ask for a Feudal Age Men-at-Arms rush? Because there's a current build that the OTD boys are doing, and it kind of looks dirty. It reminds you of the first release, Or the Dragon, where everyone thought Men-at-Arms are broken. With Pro Scouts, you can vomit out an unfathomable count of Men-at-Arms. And there's the racks to kick us off.
Yeah, this map is definitely different from most of the competitive maps you see out there. It's a lot more Olin-y. It's a lot like it looks like a map where you can just wall yourself in, and you could just say, "Well, I'm going to sit behind my walls, play a slow game." But no, this is a map where aggression can pay off really well. And I guess the only saving grace for Beasty here is that his gold mine is tucked away very nicely at the back, so that's going to be difficult to challenge. And Beasty's getting ready to get the deer in himself. I think he's pushing some of the deer in. It takes quite a lot of time. But he's actually doing a really good job herding all of them. This is not just 1 or 2 deer being pushed in. He might actually have the whole herd.
This is always valuable to do. And the problem is Anotand, he went for the spear play, but he done it on delay. He triggered the tech up first, right? So this first spearman is going to be too late to really stop anything. By the time he gets here, it should end up in TC range, which is why Anotand is now trying to intercept. A few snipes. Nice. Love that. Just jumps in the center. I'm the one who matters in this party. Okay, all the deer leave. So all of a sudden, we actually have a little bit of a spread here. That one deer is being adventurous down the hill again. But it means the spearman should be able to do a little bit of damage here, considering it only takes, what was that? I think it's 3 hits in Feudal Age to kill a scout.
All that work for nothing. All the carcasses are now out, and Beast is just going to have to ferry those in. He's heavy on gold, so this is going to be a pro scouts build. But Gilded Spearmen are dirty. Look at that.
Yep.
1 shot, and half of your HP is gone. It's one of the most ludicrous units in the game.
Yeah, I think
plus 40 or so bonus damage against Cav.
I think we'd need to add appropriate animations. Like when a spearman stabs at a cavalry unit, he should full on just impale them and flick them behind him, you know? That's how bloody powerful these things are. They are awkward to use on wider maps in the Pro Scout meta because it's hard to block all deer. For example, Rocky River. It's a nightmare for them. But on this map, it's so thin you know where to go. And there's the follow-up we talked about, right? Pro Scouts is coming Fano. The men-at-arms are going to start vomiting. The issue now for Beasty is he really can't afford to be in age too long against this.
He's going stable. And that's a little tricky here because if you want to play Pro Scouts yourself, you gotta drop a stable if you're playing the Chinese. And that is some commitment to resources. You get the Pro Scout stack as well. You're nowhere close to being able to field any combat-ready army out there. You're definitely not going to be able to hold this off with horsemen. So by the time you really start getting your production going, Anotand is going to have a sizable force in front of your base.
Yeah, so I think for Beasty, I'm wondering, man, there's 2 approaches to what's probably coming here, right? If you're worried this is a mass men arm strat, you either outpost up like crazy, or you go with a Barbican and then maybe castle. I don't know if you can maybe just do it without the Barbican at all. I feel like most people who've tried to counter that greed have at least dropped the second defensive structure. Because you'd think that a hand cancel would be great against men-at-arms. It is true. A lot of damage goes through. But it's a slower attack speed, and they're still stupidly tanky. This unit doesn't feel like a Feudal Age unit. It's 230 HP, Lidical. That's how much health you get on a Castle Age Knight.
Well, at the very least, it still cannot teleport through walls because Beasty is getting some walls down south.
So we need to see Order of the Shinobi as a variant civ? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, let's do Gilded Shinobi. I'm sure it's going to be a perfectly balanced unit. And now Beasty might have been surprised by this, just looking at the fact that he's scrambling to build up that range with 12 villagers.
That was balls. This is not the men-at-arms you want to turn onto with shivs there. Oh my god, Anna already out of sheep as well. I mean, the tricky part of the 2-scout opener, right? It turns, like I said, with this map, it turns the rotation to a linear thing. If you go north and south, you intercept the enemy scout and then mirror him, which guarantees you bare minimum 2/3 of the sheep on the map. Looks like the men-at-arms is going to be stuck in the corner, so the horseman will get rid of him, but I'd say what?
That's a big loss for Anotand. It's a tanky unit, but it's an expensive unit as well. And Beasty is probably going to get Song Dynasty now. And I just want to highlight this up for a moment. Running out of sheep now for Anotand. Okay, he still has carcasses, and Beasty is dropping the Barbican in the middle of the map. Now, that's a ballsy move if I've ever seen one.
If he gets this wrong and there was one more men-at-arms coming in, this is disaster, right? Because it could just ruin you. So it is crazy, but it's because he done that forward posturing play with the Pro Scouts. He sees everything that is, everything that would be. And what he does not see is a threat that would stop him from doing that Barbican.
And now Beasty's yoinking all the deer carcasses from the other side, and I sound like a broken record, but every single game I like to highlight sheep, even when you have Abbasids, even when you have the Byzantines. It's not equally significant for all civs, but here in this case, for instance, Beasty having the majority of the sheep has a big impact on the game. Anotand needs to make sure he secures some of those deer carcasses, otherwise he's going to be in deep trouble. He's trying to get to Castle Age, but that will take a lot of food for him.
Yeah, you definitely are obsessed with sheep a lot for a guy who like lives in America. I would have thought it'd be more about like beef and pork there, but for real, it's kind of crazy actually just how much sheep value got off that map. And the crazy thing as well you have to keep in mind is like I wish we could have seen a replay of it. In the opening phase, what would have likely happened is Anotand's scout would have ran in the direction of Beastie's. And because Beastie has Tang, he would have seen the enemy scout first. Which means he can then knee-jerk push north from there and cut off all the rest of the sheep on the map. Like, it's actually crazy how smart that play was in the opening. As long as Beastie is paying immediate attention, he should always end up with the sheep advantage by a mile. And now we have desperation mode. Like, Burgrave, I say desperation, it's good for Order of the Dragon. It's kind of necessary when you don't build units in Feudal. But it feels desperate from a food quantity perspective.
It feels like it, and Beastie knows that this is coming. Beastie is going to age as well. Remember, he's got the Barbican in the middle, so he already has that nice funnel point. He, in fact, has a bunch of gold miners defended here. And here's the thing. You age to castle, you have the ability to supervise the production buildings, and you know it's going to be good at men-at-arms. So Beastie is just going to rush castle here, and he's going to get a bunch of crossbows out. It really feels like desperation mode for Anotand, because by the time he gets anything going in Castle Age, Beastie's already going to have the answer.
Yeah, and like to emphasize, like I don't think Burgrave is desperation pro to build it. It makes sense in all the Dragon builds. Like if you don't have a standing feudal army, you need to actually go Burgrave. It can save upwards of like 400 resources a minute with Military Academy, so it actually is worth it compared to just going Regnates. The problem here is like he just doesn't have the quantity of safe resources in his base to necessarily fully leverage it as minutes go on. Meanwhile, Beastie, astronomical clock tower's already coming in. You mentioned the Barbican. You can already see what this is turning into. Let me get some nest of bees, and let me stand on that high ground and middle finger.
Beastie's actually going to open a couple of Lancers here, not crossbows. I don't know how I feel about that against all these Gilded Spearmen and Gilded Crossbows coming out. It's going to be fine against the Men-at-Arms, though. Beastie will need some crossbows, though, I feel.
I know this is kind of nice though, getting to scale into Gilded Crossbowmen, uncontested potentially, but scary as well because of the aforementioned nest of bees, right? Like I think the idea of adding in more prelates is going to be a good idea for Anotand because considering his current position in the game, he's going to need a level of sustainability in his comp, right? And the cool thing about OTD is while healing takes a long time, there's a double merit to doing it. We'll probably eventually see Anno consider Inspired Warriors if we get deep enough in past the relic phase.
Love the boar being pulled by Beastie here just to do some extra damage here to the Spearman, also the Monk as well. Both the players rushing for the relics as we speak. Monk is gonna fall. Gilded Spearman falls to a boar, which is always a sad sight to see. Beastie now
so
taking control over the sacred site.
Right? That should be how it works. I'm telling you guys, like, you know, we need to revamp the wildlife. If a boar kills someone, it gets extra food. Oh, that would be awesome. Could you imagine the strategies of like force feeding the boar? Well, I don't want these units anymore. Just lets the boar eat them.
Beast is going to have to disengage from this one. Spearman chasing him away for a time being. Love the walls from Beastie, by the way, to the south. He knows fully well that a single Gilded Knight could ruin his game. And those walls will just make sure that he's not going to get surprised from the flanks. And now he's committing heavily to stone. From here on out, it's camp the sacred site and try to force Anotand to make something happen.
So what's the upsides for Anna? I mean, he's at least got boar secure, so he should have more resource to work with. Relics aren't all just locked in for BC yet, right? But like realistically, from his position, it should be a 3-2 split. We have got Lancers now diving in. My concern is Anno has not got walls. His comp is way too slow. Like at some point, you have to spread wide, like that boar play. And when you do that, you're opening yourself up to raids.
And that Monk should be dead as well. Beast is going to think twice about that, but once the Volo is gone, I think the Monk is going to die.
You can kill the Crossbowman and then the Monk, right? But I think instead he's heading straight for the economy. So yeah, it gets rid of the Prelate. It'll run by onto the Gilded Villages. That could be at least 2 going down. And we still have a clock ticking while this is happening.
And this is the biggest problem I feel for Anotand. He would love to decap the Sacred Site. He would love to push that. But at the same time, he needs to deal with these Lancers, and Lancers aren't really a good stand-and-fight style unit when you want to protect that Sacred Site in the middle. So, Beasty's doing the right thing by just running circles around the enemy and making sure that Anotand cannot really mass up a force and push the middle. And every second he delays Anotand, he buys more time for these stone miners to get the stone they need for the first keep.
And it won't just be one keep. I've seen what this turns into. The extreme ends, it's 6 keeps, like back to back, but double, triple keep can make a lot of sense. If you want some more firepower, you can sometimes reason with the idea of just building outposts and that kind of thing. Rams coming in from Anotand is going to be a little bit awkward here because with keeps going up, it's going to be a lot of firepower you're going to have to dive if you want to make this work.
The keeps aren't coming up, though. Chinese will build them fast, but Beasty is still only at 500 stone. Beasty doesn't have Nest of Bees, and that's 12 Gilded Men-at-Arms with quite some upgrades. I think Anotand needs to go, like, right now. And I think if Anotand fails this push, it might be game, but I think he might just have a small window here.
I mean, never say never, right? Give it a punt, but in the meantime, these raids still keep slithering in. Chip damage here or there, that's definitely beginning to add up. Double ram does not really look that threatening.
Yeah, he's just slow. Now Beasty has the stone for a keep. He's going to drop it as we speak.
If you drop it, the Men-at-Arms will kill you, though. Like, you have to thin that herd first. Army, I mean, well, Beasty, he only has 10 crossbows here. Not a lot.
I don't think it's 10 crossbows, actually. It's more like 8 or so. Some of them might be back at home for Beasty, and this is what I was talking about. You might just have a window if you're Anotand. At the very least, you need to decap the Sacred Site. That is the bare minimum. Just stop that timer, but it looks like Anotand wants more.
Well, he has split his formation, though. Half his army's not chasing anymore. It means the kite is real. The Lancers could even just kind of reset that charge in.
Oh, that's a massive overreach.
I know. I mean, there was no easy running away now, right? You turn around, you lose more in the retreat, especially with Lancers there, so he just has to A-click in. He's going to lose a giant chunk of his frontline MAA here. Now, he did decap it, but that is going to leave him too weak. He immediately calls GG. The Chinese will remain your kings of this hill.
Oh, man. I feel like if he doesn't chase that much, there might have been a glimpse of hope for him. He decapped the Sacred Site. Maybe he felt desperate that if he ever falls back, Beast is going to drop a keep. Remember, he saw the stone mine. He saw the stone miners out there. He knew fully well that a keep was imminent. But at the end of the day, once he started chasing down hills and just got picked apart by the crossbows, there was just no turning back. Beasty now makes it 2-1. And I think so far, out of the 3 games that we've seen, this probably felt the most one-sided.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you go for that type of Men-at-Arms play on the opening, right? Like, you know, it kind of felt like Anno wasn't convinced he got enough, and thus he didn't double down. And as a result, you're kind of half in, half out, I want to say. Like, the better choice there would have been to, go up to 3 Spearmen and maybe block the Pro Scouts a bit more efficiently. Just unfortunate for him. Order of the Dragon, definitely still a Civ that's in an experimental phase, and sometimes those experiments blow up in your face.
And now, we're getting ready for Gorge here. This is, I don't know how many highlights we're going to have from this game here.
There wasn't enough from this one. Yeah, this was pretty much the high point for Anotand. Look at that guy go. Got him.
Yeah. And here, you see, he's going to be able to push away Beasty from the top of the hill. He is going to get the decap. There is no question about it. I just don't know why he wanted to chase this force down hills. Maybe he felt like, remember, his eco was pushed. He was starting to run low on food. Maybe he felt like he needed a Hail Mary. But I don't know if this was the right choice here, chasing this army all the way down, leaving you exposed in a wide open field against an army that can micro against you and one that's going to pick you apart. And Beastie is doing a really good job here, just pulling this army downwards and saying, okay, if you're going to keep pursuing me, I'll put you in a position where you can no longer retreat from.
Yeah, and some other thing we caught on the cameras, I'm pretty sure the villagers got repaired at that stage, because that wasn't just the Barbican hand cannon slot. Remember, you can upgrade the Barbican with everything. So it had a Springwood shooter in there as well. So the Gilded Crossbowmen that got left behind, because I think the A-click actually left them there probably, were slowly getting killed off while the Men-at-Arms were dying over here, right? So at that stage, you don't even get the Barbican. Sure, you get the decap, but you're just a mile behind. So I appreciate you didn't just try to hang around. At that stage, there's really nothing left to play for in this game. So, that does mean we've got Gorge next, and this does inspire hope for a 2-2 scoreline, Lidicor. HRE, with the current meta, have kind of returned to that old school build that was beating Delhi before Ghazi were introduced to the game, where you'd mass men-at-arms and spearmen, and then tech. With Pro Scouts, that build is once again quite possible for HRE.
Anotand does have his love for HRE and OOTD. Loves the variance and the baseline one as well. A fundamentally different map from everything that we've seen so far, though. We've seen hybrids, we've seen King of the Hill, which is kind of its own niche. Cliffside is one of the more sectioned off map as well. Remaining maps, except for Hill and Dale, are much more open, though. So we are going to see a shift in the play styles, I would say. HRE versus Delhi. I think this is, as you said, winnable for Anotand. One thing that you need to consider, though, is that the window, to a certain extent, is starting to close for Anotand. If he loses this game, Beasty is going to move on to match point. So he is going to have to deliver a mistake-free game here.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, Boldland was there as well. Like, what was the thought process in Gorge over Boldland? I mean, in theory, Delhi can be somewhat dangerous there, right? Because the secret sites are tight together. So you can go for a cap on both, and then you just spam spears and Ghazi to protect the center. But, like, it's a little bit different for HRE in that map. As long as you're still getting the food sources back, you can still spam men-at-arms. I guess in Anno's mind, this felt safer. There's 3 sacred sites, so your opponent can't start that timer as quickly. They're spread a little bit wider. But yeah, once again, the trade-off is going to be, although your own deer are going to be safer, the further off ones are going to be much harder. Let's see how he wants to approach it, though. We hop into game number 4, deep into the Gorge. Beasty now with the Delhi and Anotand. He's got a favorable pick in the HRE, the type that could easily see us tying this up 2-2 apiece.
Or a game that we could see Beasty move into match point with. That's a big one as well. Beasty with the 2-1 lead. And we talked about this, KP, in the pregame. It's a big change. This map is fundamentally different from everything that we've seen in this series so far. Looking at the gold spots, Anotand is going to have it tucked kind of backish, more offset to the side. Beasty does have both his gold and the berries right next to one another, though. So there are some points of aggression there for either side, really.
It's a nice spawn for Anno, though, right? He can drop the Archon to buff the gold and the tree line if he wants to, and that also staggers it to the side, where you're actually not going to miss out on as much territory to place farms on as you would if you drop the Archon right behind the TC. So overall, I'd say this is a reasonable spawn. For the deer side of things, I've seen worse. I mean, it's for deer, right? But you can shove in with your scout after the initial rotation just to get this underneath the TC or close to. In fact, for Beasty, what would be really cool is, like, because you don't have to rush home with your sheep, you could just hang around and lame the deer a bit so he can't get max value out of the HRE open. So I'm trying to think how Beasty wants to open this. You'd think Ghazi straight away, but HRE can be pretty good at just beginning spears. There's some matchups right now where they would have just went Dark Age Spearman. You don't really do it here because Delhi don't care, right? With the Scholar, they can heal through. So he does just go for the fast Feudal. Archon is now on the way in the expected spot. Beasty, I don't think we're going to see any old school TOV build. We're likely just looking at the meta of Dome of Faith.
I think so as well. This map, yeah, there is Dome of Faith. And I think one thing that I've seen in the previous games, every single one of them, is that both players love to go for relics early game. Every single game so far, the moment you hit Castle Age, there's a race for relics. Dome of Faith is going to help you quite a bit in that department.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it scales you for that later game much better, right? Like, Dome of Faith is just kind of nuts for that reason. The amount of scholars you pump going into the 15, 20-minute mark. I mean, it's why we see people just bypass into Imperial and get over 12,000 resources worth of techs in less than 5 minutes, which is insane considering it doesn't cost them anything extra. But Sheephole, looking pretty good for BC. That's to be expected. HRE, start the sheep, you start the berries, and they also eat them faster. What's going to be important, though, is the following up phase. We clearly have macro for Pro Scouts from Anotand.
Yeah, no surprise on that front. Especially if you're playing a civilization like the HRE, just being able to bring in the carcasses underneath your Archon Chapel, it's a big boost. Even in the days where Pro Scouts weren't that powerful, HRE was one of the few civilizations that kind of had the idea of going for it. Now that Pro Scouts is a lot more powerful, it's basically a no-brainer for a civ like HRE.
Yeah, the old school 4 stables Pro Scouts Castle Age build, right? I still remember those. Iaguz, I think Matisse was another one of the very first people who started bringing it in back in the good old days. Bloody ridiculous build at its height. Kind of fell off, right? And then all of a sudden, now we have a meta where every single civ in the game does Pro Scouts. We've even seen the Bastards do it. Like, no one is safe from this current meta. Of course, for Delhi, they will play it. They'll just play it on their own delay. They don't rush it, which means they need to try and block it at first. I'm wondering, it has to be stables, you'd think here, right? Like, Spearman is going to be too slow.
Yeah, it's got to be stables, and there it is. Beasty once again comes up with the majority of the sheep, by the way. Just look at this huge hole he brought in. Not a lot of sheep under the town center of Anotand here, so we're kind of getting a repeat of that previous game where Anotand is kind of forced to bring in all these carcasses. It's not just a bonus for him, it's a necessity. If he doesn't deliver the carcasses, he's just going to run out of food so quickly.
Yes, so sometimes when Anotand plays Gorge, he likes to go for the double scout opener. The reason you don't do it here is because it doesn't phase Delhi. Like, you usually do that in a matchup where you both need the sheep, right? So unfortunately, his rotation is just a little bit lackluster. We did have the scout scene added in. However, he didn't shove the deer in. And if you have a look at Beasty's move with his scout, he's already laming the deer so that Anotand can't get them closer to home.
Nice and cheeky play here. And he is indeed opening Ghazi Raiders. Response from Anotand is going to be Spearman. So he's going to have the immediate response, but he's also going to be on the slower side of things. So one thing I'm going to be looking at is whether Anotand can sneak in a couple of carcasses. That's something that Beasty has done really well in the previous games. Every time there was pressure from Anotand on the carcasses he intended to bring in, he found alternative spots. He was able to sneak in a couple of carcasses from other deposits. I want to see that from Anotand as well. If he's going to get slowed down with the Pro Scouts built here because of these Ghazi Raiders, I think he's going to be in trouble.
It's like Beasty just scouted out his corner spawn of deer here. So he's keeping the Ghazi around on his own reserves just to make sure Anotand isn't getting sneaky with his first scout pull. We do have the Spearman, of course, coming out to try and protect the safe one. I think Anno has to take one of the close deer stacks first because the lack of long-term sheep. Yeah, it's already down to 5. So, like, you can't go for that cheeky, cheesy play where, say, you've got 10 sheep in reserve. You send the first 5 scouts out to the enemy pack. So with that in mind, Beasty, I think, is now looking to posture aggressively. We have additional Ghazi on the way. No additional switch just yet. I think he's going to try to stick mobile with the Ghazi. Okay, there we go. Archers coming in. If he can keep the Spearman here, he could use those archers to try and wall across the center and divide the map.
I would love to see that. I think this map, just like Cliffside, has 2 very distinct stages. Early game, it's a super wide open map, but if you ever go into late game, it's going to be one of those rolling fiestas. Beasty still looking to harass these carcasses out here. Big commitment from Anotand going for the spears. Archers are coming out from Beasty, however, and he does have efficient production, so it doesn't take a lot of time for him to get those archers going and maybe even contest this this deer pack.
Now, we have efficient production, but what we need is efficient counterplay, all right? Hear me out. Here's the play. Child of B, he was in my chat the other day when we were plotting this all out. So what you want to do, you want to move an archer over to where your deer are and herd them all on top of each other. And then with your Delhi archer, you want to build a wall around where you shoot them down. And then you don't have to worry about your opponent stealing your deer, Lidicor. He'll never get his hands on them ever.
Big horseman flank here, and this tower is late. Oh boy.
It's not late, it's dead.
It's dead.
Yeah, it has no pulse. Oof. That's wasteful. Anotand just 100 wood down the drain there. Nothing lost for Beasty. Meanwhile, he gains, right? Sacred Sight's now getting locked in.
This is starting to look grim here for Anotand. Beasty has been running circles around him for the last few minutes. And behind this, Anotand is still forced to bring in those carcasses. That is his primary point of emphasis. And while that's happening, Beasty's getting the walls up, Beasty's getting the sacred sites going, and now Beasty has Pro Scouts as well. He's going to start picking up all these carcasses. I feel like Beasty has such a huge tempo advantage here.
Nice, some toxic walling as well, just kind of blocking all the plays out. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, what's the backup plan? If this fails, Anotand needs to go Castle Age. If you can get those walls up, good luck picking up relics. Admittedly, most of them are on the east side of the map here, and we are going to see that trigger on castle. I think for Anotand, Regnus may be a bit too greedy here. Yeah, but he goes for it anyway. I get why he can't go Burgrave, right? He just doesn't have enough food. That's the problem. But it feels like Regnus, when you lack map control like this, isn't going to solve your problems anytime soon.
Yeah, I think, again, one of the problems that Anotand is facing is that he had basically no sheep to work with. So if he doesn't heavily prioritize the deer carcasses, he's not going to have any food to work with. There is just no backup. And because of this, he just has to go for the carcasses, means that Beasty can do whatever he wants, capture the sacred sites whatsoever, because Anotand has to have different priorities.
Beasty just getting a lot of scholars at this stage, right? He can get ready for that pump and dump into castle where he'll be on top of all the relics, kind of reaching that point. And Anotand, I mean, yeah, men at arms, they're going to be great, right? The thing you want to scale. The problem is there is a lot of Ghazi right now. And those Ghazi do get bonus damage against you, right? So it's not just a cut and dry MAA beat all, per se.
And the thing is that if you go at men at arms, as you said, Ghazi Raiders do get a bonus damage against you, but there is also the healing power of the scholars.
Yeah, which we're seeing right
Men at
here.
arms don't do... Yeah, men at arms don't do a lot of damage against Ghazi Raiders, so that's most of the damage you can actually offset by healing. It's not like you're fighting into spearmen where the healing cannot match up against the damage output. Men at arms don't do a lot of damage against these Ghazi Raiders, and I just don't know if men at arms will work whatsoever. Granted, Anotand does have quite a few of them, but if there is any civilization that can deal with them in Feudal Age, that's Delhi.
I mean, Delhi aren't going to be in Feudal for long, right? Beasty, give it another half a minute. He's getting ready to trigger Castle Age. Probably give me like 14 to rush it up here, just to make sure he's got that scaling timing. And I mean, the relics. Currently, we're seeing Anotand pick up a grand total of 0, right? He's struggling to actually get out of the base.
Yeah. Even if he does, I think... Oh boy, Goldmine getting hit once again. Even if he picks up some relics, there are some other issues. On this map, you gotta be able to move out of your base. You gotta be able to get access to the new forest, the hunt as well, and that is not something that we are seeing just yet. Timing is gonna be nice here for Anotand. He hits Beasty as he's aging up, and Beasty's running the wrong way here. But at the end of the day, I actually wonder if Beasty's doing this to just divert the attention away from the age up. Yeah, he probably is.
Yeah. Oh, we got... He's doing no damage. Oh man, this many scholars just don't care. They're too tanky themselves. He goes after the archers, but like realistically, you just need to be A-clicking on the villagers. That's your only hope here. Ghazi now arriving. There's a lot of idle time being achieved here, but he needs to convert into kills. And we are finally going to see a few of them coming out. Workers do get pinched on the backside. 3 or 4 going down.
Yeah, now at the end of the day, at least Anotand gets something out of this, and he is bringing back 2 relics. But as you said, the problem is that Beasty is going to just shrug it off with the sacred sites under his control. If he can get some relics as well, that's going to help too. And he gets a lot of resources in the form of free technologies. So losing 5 villagers, it's not ideal for him, but it's not a deal breaker.
No, as long as he gets the relics. Although, then again, Anotand, I'm kind of impressed by this timing. Things looked a little bit dirt for him, right? It felt like PC was going to get that classic 3 to 4 relic whole time on the scholars. But I think what Anotand done well here is he prepped additional prelates, and instead of running them out 1 by 1, risking them and losing them, he kind of just kept them at home after they kept getting corralled back to base, right? Like BC was keeping them pinned. He wasn't killing them. And all of a sudden we have a game where Anno is now ahead by 5 villages. He's going to be up 3 to 2 relics, potentially still 4 at this pacing. I think he's kind of okay with this.
We've seen this before, where Anotand seems like he's in a tough spot, but then he finds a way to hit Beasty's eco, and then things even out a little. And Beasty had to commit a lot of his...
What happened on the
Beasty
food?
had to commit a lot of his Ghazi Raiders to defend, so it's not like he has a lot of these running around to kill the monks.
I'm still scratching my brain on what happened on the food, right? I felt like Anotand was dry, but you know, he didn't even get both deer packs fully back. I'm kind of shocked.
Well, he is dry.
Well, yeah, he's dry, but like, you know, it's kind of like being dry on the whiskey for the month. You know, you get more of a headache when your kids scream, but you know, at least you feel like you're a little bit more clear at work, right? You're able to do your job. And the crazy thing here is it's allowed him to kind of optimize how you use these MAA, not dispose of them in a careless fashion. he's got a decent army that's kind of scary for Beasty to contest when you consider that when you take away the scholars, they're neck and neck. The other thing for Anno is like, you know, farm transitions are uncomfortable, sure, granted, but for this Civ, usually a lot more comfortable. Fast wood gathering and better gathering farms, but I've got a raid coming in. Leonidas will not be able to hold back the entire wave of Persians. They are going to make it through.
And Anotand got caught transitioning to stables here. Beasty knows exactly what's going on. Villagers have to jump inside here. A couple of villagers will fall. Beasty needs to make up that villager gap, and he does just that. Also spots that Anotand just now ran out of gold. At the same time, one thing I was going to say is that the Ghazi Raiders, when Beasty was aging up, he had to fall back with them. And that's what allowed Anotand to pick up the relics and go for some of the other carcasses as well. Now, however, you do have crossbows back at home, so Anotand can no longer just push into the enemy base with men-at-arms.
So, what is the win condition now in the eyes of these two? I mean, for Beasty, there's always that classic get elephants and laugh in the face of your enemy. Anotand, if he wants to survive this, we're going the wrong direction. He's countering the crossbows with horsemen, but this doesn't counter elephants. Like, this is really critical, folks. If you don't have crossbows, war elephants win games. It's really that simple.
I think you start with walls, and Beasty has some of them. We talked about this. This map has 2 stages, and once you get to this point where you have to start moving out of your base, it becomes way too cumbersome to track down enemy units with your own troops. You want to have those walls go in so that you have some safety back at home, and if you don't, things like this will happen. Ghazi Raiders will swing by, try to hit your wood line. This time Anotand will be ready for them, though.
I mean, this is cool. You stop the raid, but Anotand still doesn't know elephants are coming. It's like, you'd think because he's building spears, of course Anotand knows. But Lydical, have you seen spears fight against elephants? It's not fair. It's not fair at all. Okay, like that unit is meant to be counted by spearmen. It's not.
What's more worrisome for Anotand is that he's also facing 24 crossbows, 10 archers as well. So 16 spearmen, they will get picked apart by crossbowmen. It's not like they will live long enough to even face that elephant.
I'm a little bit concerned, man. I mean, I know he hasn't really got that much food. The farmlands aren't set up, right? So spamming this much into horsemen just for it to maybe not be the play you want is scary. If he finds the timing quick enough, it could be a good fight. The problem is you've got 9 horsemen. You're not ready to find that fight. You're going to wait until you're like 20, at which point Beasty could have 4 war elephants.
Yeah, Anotand does have this one board to work with, so he does have some extra food to spam out some horsemen with for the time being, but as you can see, when those villagers on the board are idle, he's at 300 or so per minute. Sustainability is not on his side. This is a nice little raid here with the men-at-arms, and it definitely caught Beasty off guard. He just lost track of these men-at-arms. Problem is that men-at-arms are just too slow at Beasty. Oh!
Oh, marching drills will be quick enough. We're out of there.
That's the big problem you have with the man-at-arms. Now, you could actually do some damage with the horsemen here, and Anotand is once again looking to pounce on multiple fronts. Sees the elephants for the first time, however.
And now we're like, why have I bothered to deal with these horsemen? We've got more laws coming out. The crossbows now arrived, so the backstab raid by Anotand is going to be... Anotand, can we check his farm count? Because, like, now that you know what you're really up against, how are you going to afford the counter? Like,
he's got 1,100 wood in the bank, though. So, yeah, like, he's just going to spam them. I don't actually like where he's spamming them, because that's probably the most exposed angle you have.
Let's be real. If the elephants get there, you've already lost the game.
Fair point. Very fair point. He also needs to decap one of the sacred sites. So at this point, Beasty might not be intrigued by actually pushing into the enemy base. There is one sacred site that it's actually on the other side of the wall.
No.
Rip.
Well, we're just gonna run past them, guys. Don't look at them. Don't make eye. Just run past. 4 of us are dead.
Oh man. I think Anotand saw the opening on the wall and he was like, okay, I can slip past. I need to slip past. Now, this would have been a huge hit. Beasty needs to mass wall this corner, because if those horsemen ever reach the back line, this could be a lot of damage. Not a lot of villagers are building this wall, though. Can Anotand find this in time? He's shifting in the wrong direction.
Just one is all it takes. But he's got a brother as well. 1 or 2 villagers will go down, but at this stage, Anno reduced down to 6 horsemen, and now here's the problem, Lytical. He has to counter the elephants, but he hasn't countered the crossbows.
If he shifted to the south, towards that little corner, he could have found a lot more value, and now the crossbows are marching forward. And, you know, Castle Age armies are rarely capable of taking out a lot of static defensive structures. That's not the case when you have elephants on board.
Like this, you know, the best way to think of these horsemen, these elephants rather, they're kind of just like, I guess they're pretty much the mountain from Game of Thrones, right? You don't want to get in the arena with them at all. They're ridiculous. They look grotesque. They look a little bit overcompensating on the muscle. But they really do mean business when you get them in the ring. And right now, Anotand, he doesn't have a Viper to even dance around them in this fight. The crossbow counter A is not going to solve the issue here at all.
I love these little trenches. Just using that battlefield construction ability from the Delhi so well. And Sacred Site Countdown is going on. Elephants are marching forward as well, and
so
these farms will be so short-lived.
The moment that the elephants reach there, it's grazing time, boys. We're in. It's got upgrades coming through, but slowly. Springald shots are going to deter, but that's what the Scholars are for. Yeah, I think we should just rename these guys vets, you know, or zookeepers. Scholars doesn't really do justice to the healing services to these beautiful elephants.
You know what the craziest thing about this is? It's
what?
Free.
Wow.
You don't have to pay for it.
Whoa. You mean what? So it's like NHS for animals? Bloody hell. Ellie, you've got it figured out. Well, your repairs is about to run out. The crossbows couldn't kill one war elephant quick enough. I think this is fairly conclusive. If you don't believe me, literally look up at the military pop count and then realize that Anotand will probably need 40 more than what his opponent has in total to beat this many elephants. There's 7 war elephants in total. Well,
that's a steamroll in here, and Beasty's going to move on to match point here unless something miraculous happens here for Anotand. Decisive game here, and really, I think Beasty might have had a slightly slower start than many would have expected him to have.
Yeah.
But now he's getting into shape, and we've seen him being very, very dominant yesterday. I think we're seeing peak Beasty now because, especially this last game, was nearly mistake-free.
No, and I think the other thing as well is like, Anotand has to maybe be scratching his head a little bit, right? Like this is a matchup that has, on paper, looked really good for HRE in the last few months. Ever since the Pro Scouts meta shuffled in, HRE looked just scary for Delhi to contest because they can't rush their timing. But the difference is the map, man. I mean, Gorge, he was unfortunate with the spawn compared to Beasties, right? Beasties looked a lot better with them both being pivoted on one side of the map. That's really good for HRE because they should be able to match the momentum timing of the Delhi in the opening phase. The problem here, though, is like you picked Gorge. There was a good chance this was going to happen. There was a good chance that the deer were going to be spread wide, left, and right in an ideal fashion. What you want is a map where the deer spawns can be more linear towards your opponent, kind of like what even Dry Arabia offers. So a little bit tricky there. Borderland would have definitely made a lot more sense for him. I think that's something that Anotand is going to have to reassess whether this was essential, but in some ways it was. You have to remember we've got a redraft after this, right? So this was your final shot to use HRE. The question mark is why you didn't use Borderland.
Yeah, one thing I'm looking at here, just looking at these little skirmishes here as the villagers were harassed, this has been a theme in both this game and the previous one. Men-at-Arms, Anotand loves to use them, but Beasty's doing a really good job pulling away the villagers, formation shuffling to minimize the damage output. And oftentimes these raids were just not significant because the men-at-arms couldn't kill enough villagers in time. These were night raids where you lose a bunch of vills. At the end of the day, you see, even with these horsemen and men-at-arms raids, Anotand killed less than 10 villagers across this game.
Yeah, and now we have a worrisome situation, right? Like, this is the nightmare. You know, it could be worse. You could be dead before a redraft, but in a redraft now, that opening game can be very tricky. You have to be elegant about exactly what map you choose, or you are just dead out of the gate. And the crazy part is Beasty will have 4 civs to choose from, and he can get very creative on what he does with those particular civs. Right? He doesn't have to do the expected.
And our next map is going to be Borderlands, so we're going on to an even more so open map out here, and it's going to be Malians versus the HRE. So, more HRE. We've actually seen a lot of HRE and variant Civilization Order of the Dragon across this series. But this time around, it's going to be Beasty with the HRE, and Anotand is going to channel his inner Ilalu, going for the Malians.
Well, Malians have historically looked really good on this map. A little bit tricky against HRE in particular. I think that HRE can open the Spearman just to kind of frustrate you a little here. So I wouldn't just write this off as a Malian win. But, you know, considering his other options, I don't think China would have a great time against HRE pressure. John, Iabid's Eva. So he did definitely get the best pick possible. Looking a little bit deeper in the draft, things can get a bit scary. You've got Hill and Dale, where Mongols have been, I think, looking pretty good on the win percentages on that particular map. Anno has Jean, which doesn't really want to go against Delhi. I don't really feel like you want to, against all the Dragon, I don't think you want to be there either. It's like for Anno, his strong points are definitely Malians and Chinese here. The Iabids are going to need a specific matchup, and I'm not even sure Jean is approachable for these remaining games.
Now, Malians is definitely a power civilization for Anotand. He lost to Marine Lord 4-1. The game that he did win, it was on Borderland, and it was with the Malians against the Delhi. So, slight change up in terms of the civilization of the opponent, but you definitely see the pattern over here. This is his comfort zone. And now that Beasty is in a match point, he's going to bring in one of his best maps, I guess, with one of his best civilizations. One big thing, though, everybody have seen that series yesterday. So did Beasty. Beasty should know what Anotand is cooking up for a map like Borderland with Malians.
The tricky thing is whether you can even exist in the game, right? Like HRE, we talked in the previous game about the Dark Age Spearman Rush and how it's just not ideal necessarily against Delhi. You can do it here. You can even follow up with an outpost. Borderland is a very undefendable map, per se, right? You have small tree lines that are further away from the TC than the TC being able to offer protection like on a Dry Arabia. And then your gold. If your gold is forward spawning here as Malians, you're in trouble. If you don't have a retracted gold in the corner, you're going to be in trouble here. So, you know, spawn could dictate a lot about how this one plays out. I can't imagine Beasty just punting into Feudal. I feel like you definitely contest here. And the tricky thing is Malians hate these Dark Age rushes because their Donzos are way too expensive to mass produce.
Yeah, it's a fundamentally different civilization matchup, I feel, relative to Malians versus Delhi. I would not be surprised if Beasty was trying to play a Castle Age timing here. When you look at Borderland, one of the things that you have to focus on is that early on your resources are fairly safe. You want to have map control when you start running out of resources within your base. And that usually happens when you get to late Feudal, early Castle. So that kind of a timing could be interesting here for Beasty. On the other side for Anotand, if he wants to play into Pro Scouts, that is something that he can do really well with the Warrior Scouts. Could make life difficult for Beasty as well. And I think one of the things I want to focus on is, in the previous two games, Anotand wasn't successful collecting sheep, and that put him on a timer because of the food availability. Here, it's a fundamentally different story. You're going to have a condensed base and a lot of passive resource income, and that's going to make it a lot more difficult for Beasty to A, deny resources, and B, to raid the eco of Anotand, something that has been a strength of Beasty across this series.
I wonder if there's a type of map where Anotand would have liked to have done like his double scout opener. I don't think he's going to do it here because I think with the threat of there being an outpost rush, you can't afford to be an extra villager down. So that's going to just rely on that one sheep gathering rotation, right? Realistically, you should still get enough to get away with the map. There is more deer on this map than a standard spawn, right? I believe there's 34 deer in total. So just plenty to grab. The problem is going to be whether you're able to smoothly get to that timing, right? Like I always see HRE best in the Pro Scouts meta when they're able to play blocker first. And they can play blocker against this Civ on this map. So that's the big thing to keep an eye out for. If, however, Beasty doesn't go for that aggressive point, Anotand should be favored because of what you mentioned with the Warrior Scouts. If this was more condensed on the deer spawn, I actually think the HRE Spearman win. But because of just how wide the spread is on deer, even Marching Drill Spearman will struggle to block everything.
Well, we just have a minute and a half left to go here. Beasty is at match point. If he ends up winning here, he's going to face Marine Lord in a best-of-9 grand finals. If Anotand takes this game, of course, then we're going to continue this lovely best-of-7. What a final day we have, though, KP. We could have Anotand, if he turns this series around. We could have him play his best-ever tournament and get a shot at challenging Marine Lord in the finals. or if Beasty wins here, we're going to get a true classic in the grand finals. A series that has been played more than 40 or so times. It's one of the most played matchups in competitive AoE 4.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, this team must be getting close to retirement. That must have spanned way too many years between the two. Exciting to think about that. I mean, Anotand, Marine Lord, rematches change a lot of things. You learn in perspective from what your opponent's done. Same time, Marine Lord, as confident as he might be, with his like, I'm the best in the game, he's sitting there in the crowd right now just taking notes, making sure that these two don't have any tricks up their sleeves that you wouldn't have seen because they had to bring them out against each other, because whoever loses here is going to be out. And reminder, folks, we are now at that phase. Beasty is on match point. Anotand can afford 0 mistakes from here on out. Admittedly, if he goes out of this stage, Lidical, it is still the best performance he's had in the history of AoE4. It's a great start to the year, but you know as well as I do, these pros, they don't care about second or third place. Second place is first place loser. It's all about who is king.
Indeed it is. It doesn't matter if it's your best ever tournament performance if you end up losing. You want to win the whole thing and make that your best ever performance. We head into game number 5 here. 3-1 lead for Beasty. And we head to Boldland to see an HRE versus Malian matchup here. Beasty to the south in red, and Anotand with the color yellow to the north.
And we are going to get that rush opening. Beasty, amid on the HRE, going into the racks, and look at the spawn. It is a disaster for Anotand. Double gold forward. Third one further out on the flank to the right side. This is exactly the type of dream spawn for Beasty's play in this game.
And once again, Beasty has a nice start here to collecting sheep. That has been a problem for Anotand across this series. This time around, though, he is going to have the Malian cattle at his disposal, which could just help things out a little. Spearman opening for Beasty, though. He is going to play this aggressively. And that gold mine that Anotand has, it's definitely not an easy one to defend.
No, and, there's a few choices here, right? Like, you could go for the outpost opening. That one always feels weird because you have to keep villagers around to guard it. The alternative is you just rush a little bit extra gold, you fall back, and you build this Saharan trade network afterwards. That still weakens your economy going into Feudal, though, compared to having a Mansa. And the third choice is, how about we build spears too? That one isn't great, because on this particular map, usually having to go away from straggler trees and drop a lumber camp is already putting you behind. On this map, the trees are so far behind, without wheelbarrow, it hinders your progress more. So that option's off the table. It comes down to whether Anno wants to react with the outpost or go with the Sahara.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he wants to go with the Saharan trade network. I wonder if he was actually anticipating this aggression here. Okay, he did. There's a tower up there. He went for a preemptive tower.
Yeah.
So this aggression isn't going to come together easily for Beasty.
But
he's not going to give up on this. He is going to continue the harassment.
Yeah, I mean, he's invested, right? He's up to 5 spears, but now you just pull a villager. Because now with this, the outpost rush is safe. Like, this is the downside of what he's just done. The pit mine might not be burnable, but A, you now have to keep villagers here, which will idle them. And B, it means you don't have Donzos to snipe the HRE villager. I think this is like one of the hardest matchups right now for Malians. Just any Civ that can do this efficiently is a pain in the ass.
And HRE can do this so well because you do have that extra influx of resources. It's such a big difference maker. It's not easy to afford mass spearmen plus mass villagers when you only have like 10 workers or so.
Yeah, it's a double buff
is just giving you...
Yeah, it's because you've got the extra economy and you've got the extra movement speed, right? So not only can you afford more spearmen, but they get here quicker. It's vulgar, man. Like, I think Mongols is the only other one that comes to mind that can kind of mirror this timing.
And one thing to keep in mind when it comes to Dark Age timings is that it might seem like you're doing a lot of damage, and then your opponent gets the Feudal Age, and you are still an age behind. So many times we have seen that players go for a lot of Dark Age pressure, and then they start losing out once the opponent gets the Feudal Age. But one of the cool things about HRE is that Beasty isn't going to have a bad timing here because of that extra resource influx. You see, he almost has the food for Feudal, and he's now shifting villagers to gold. And it's such a power when you can put up Dark Age pressure without having to delay your own Feudal Age timing by a massive margin.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what Beasty wants to do as a follow-up play here. right? You could just kind of pro scout some fast castle because your opponent can't mirror fast castle without gold access, right? The alternative is, and it's going to sound a bit wild, you could just spam archers because what is the counter to archers for Malians? It's javelins, but that requires gold. And he's going to be capped at being able to afford, like, what, maybe 4 javelins max a minute? Well, with HRE economy bustling, especially that Ark and Chapel that could be placed on the double tree line behind Beasty's base, he could flood a lot of archers just to kind of pew-pew his opponent down. So there's definitely a lot of options here. Probably safest is going to be Pro Scout's Fast Castle. But instead... Wow. Wait. Can we just get this on the record? It's 2025, Lidicor. The man who said he would never build this, that it was a trash landmark, has changed this much.
I love that quote, by the way. I think he once said, this was like 2 years ago, saying that he would rather build an Ark and Chapel in the middle of an open, empty field than to build a Minework Palace.
Yep, and yeah, apparently after he discovered his new Scrim Buddy and Vortex, something is rubbed off because this is something of an aggressive line you have in mind when you go Minework like this.
Well, Pro Scout's coming in here for Anotand, and, you know, so far this pressure has paid off so well for Beasty. Just as a side note, the tower is denying the gold mine, and because there was no arrow slits on that tower, every time Beasty moved out to torch the base, Anotand had to idle those villagers inside the tower, and look at Beasty now. He's going for the alternative gold mines. He knows that Anotand needs to make something happen here. For now, it's just going to be Pro Scouts and arrow slits, but no safe gold available right now for Anotand.
No. I mean, he has got that east side one. Can we check BC's vision? He should have scouted this. It's very important. Because if you can get to the east side, yeah, there's no easy escape here. You can't go to the east side vein unnoticed by Beasty.
This is not easy for Anotand here.
No.
And he's got warrior scouts, but the cool thing about this spearman aggression for Beasty is that there's a second layer to this. These spearmen will be useful to harass the warrior scouts as they are trying to ferry in carcasses.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? Like, Malians are more of a anti-pro scout civ than a pro scout civ, first and foremost, because the scouts are so good at harassing, but Beasty's just lobbing additional spears, man. And with the arrow slits coming in, he can abandon this and move wider to guard the deer if he wants to. It's a tricky situation. I mean, I know... Like, what do you do here? You could go archers. The scary thing is if you do go archers, you could get outscaled. The only other option that sounds kind of crazy is, like, maybe you just try to get a ram. I want to.
It's such a big investment, though, right?
It's insane. Like, if you go ram, Beasty will just go castle.
For now, Beasty's going pro scouts as well, and this whole build-up is delayed here from Anotand. He's going to get the warrior scouts going, and warrior scouts would just deny the normal scouts from being able to access the carcasses. But Beasty has a lot of spearmen out there. In fact, he's doubling down on the spearmen. He really intends to just starve his opponent out at this point.
He needs to add in a second layer, though. And the cool thing he can do here, the most broken build you can do with Minework. Do you know what it is, Lidicor?
Enlighten me. I'm not a Minework connoisseur, I'm sorry.
Pokey sticks. Horsemen, spearmen. Maximize your pokes, because with all pikes, you can buff their damage up by a ludicrous quantity. It's the most fluid way of doing it. You do Bloomery at half the price, all pikes follow up. At that stage, your spearmen have almost got an extra 50% damage output, right? And then horsemen also benefit from it. And the crazy thing is, like, what is Anotand going to do here? He's building into archers, so he's already inviting you to go towards the pokey sticks, bro.
It's difficult for Anotand right now. I'm trying to think of potential win conditions or even just like avenues for him to go down on. But he's ferrying in carcasses. He's nowhere close to building up any substantial cattle. Not a lot of... His second pit mine was just now dropped. Because he didn't have a lot of gold income, he doesn't have a lot of techs to work with. And Beasty, as you said, is already prepping a composition that's going to be a hard counter to what Anotand is getting ready for.
The sadness is, like, you look at Anotand's comp and go, but Lidicor, he has like 2 unit types here. Yeah, but warrior scouts are weird. They're very weird. Yeah. They can kind of tank, but they don't get bonus damage, right? Their base damage is kind of okay, but like at this stage in the game, you know what I'm going to say here? You're thinking of bonus damage, right? Because you need that extra DPS to counterplay.
A warrior scout is exactly what the name is. A warrior scout. It's something that's better than a normal scout when it comes to fighting, but it's still, at the end of the day, a scout and not a frontline combat unit.
Funnily enough, they do actually have bonus damage against siege at this stage, right? But it's like, that's not very useful here. They don't get the bonus against archers until they're in castle, which is just a mile away for Anno, and we are getting the archer blob. So like Beasty is inclined to just spam more horsemen. He can even add in his own archers. Other cool thing about the mine work is the fluidity with which you get into all your blacksmith techs, not just the unique ones. And we're already seeing Undermesh there to counter Anotand's play in a game where he hasn't got his own beastsmith yet.
And because Anotand has to ferry in these carcasses, he's actually taking a lot of damage on these warrior scouts. So it's not like a lot of these scouts are in good condition and ready to fight. In fact, they're actually getting mauled by the spearmen. Even the ones that are still alive, they're pretty heavily damaged. And this is a fortified tower on that gold mine.
I mean,
that's I love it.
It's smart, but like, you know, look at the way BC's playing the map. Here he's somewhat of a worm, and it's kind of showing the way he can sliver around, and almost, I want to say, it's more like a boa constrictor at this stage. He's starting to move closer and closer and closer to Anotand's base, right? And the whole idea here is that the pro scouts will no longer get him for free. He will no longer be able to breathe. He's trying to suffocate him out here at a very gradual pace. It's kind of crazy as well, because you'd think these archers would just be able to contest spearmen. But this many spearmen with marching drills? I'm not liking this fight that's coming up for Anotand.
And it's so difficult for Anotand to do anything against it. It's a fortified tower out there. How is he even going to get rid of that?
And it's time for
he
rams.
Cannot fight into
he actually has to build the rams. Oh, no. Do we actually have all pikes from Beasty? Because if not, like, it's worth it at this stage. With this many spearmen, he should have it. It's such a big buff. I don't know if he got it and we just didn't catch it. If we click on a spear, you can tell by the damage alone. Yeah, he doesn't have all pikes. Okay, so there's hope for Anotand. Beasty's at this stage missed a key component. In fact, yeah, he hasn't even bothered bloom. Oh, okay, there we go. It's on the way.
Takes some time to get it, but once again, warrior scouts are getting absolutely wrecked here, and now sofas are coming in for Anotand. Not a unit that you want to build against 23 spearmen. Sofas are great for Malians. Once you get to mid-Castle Age, you have an insane food income from the cattle, you have a good gold income as well. That's where you build sofas. If you're a fragile economy, you're still in Feudal Age, you don't have imported armor, sofas are such an underwhelming choice for the Malians, especially against so many spears.
They're good for mini-raiding, but your goal in this game isn't mini-raiding, right? You're clearly trying to get control of your base again, so it's a static fight. He's going to dive in. Fortified tower should be going down soon. Archers are going to have to react here. It looks like Beasty's army is posturing, though. Second wave is coming from the south side, so the tower is going to go down. He's revealed his hand now, and it's quite a lot of melee blob coming out from Beasty.
Beasty doesn't have a lot of anti-archers, though. He's only on 3 horsemen right now. He is actually going heavy into archers himself, which might have actually surprised Anotand here a little. Anotand doesn't have any javelin throwers whatsoever. He doesn't really have the gold to make them. He is getting the pit mine back up, however, and again, Beasty doesn't have something that can break 20 archers right now. Instead, he's thinking about Castle Age.
Exactly. That's the easy way to break him here, right? He's seen the overinvestment. Anotand has built a lot of archers. This isn't that really scary javelin Donzo comp that's going to dive out at you. This is a please don't dive me comp right now from Anotand. So Beasty's going to leverage that to try and scale up. I don't think we see Burgrave here. I'm not sure it's really entirely necessary. It just feels a lot safer to play Regnitz, right? Like, you have full map control. Anno doesn't want to have to really rush out.
I think if you're Beasty, you don't need to gamble Burgrave. Frankly, when you play mine work, oftentimes you end up going Burgrave, but I think Ragnitz here just makes so much sense. You have a lot of map control, go for the relics, and that's exactly what he's thinking as well.
It's the comeback maneuverability, right? Like, what you have to keep in mind, you're doing mine work into Burgrave, right? Your economy is going to be weak if you fail the first pump. This way, he has a recovery arc of just going and getting those relics. And also, that then inflates him quite nicely to buff his economy as time goes on. Because Beasty kind of done something wild here, like going mine work, going 44 villages, only having 2 prelates. That means less than 50% of his economy is receiving the prelate buff right now.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and I agree with you. I think Burgrave is such an all-in style landmark, and it's also not ideal when you play a wide open map like this. This is more of a cavalry map rather than an infantry map. For now, Anotand is going to play defensive here. He's looking to castle himself. He's not going to be that much behind compared to Beasty. He's getting the cattle going at the same time. He is not going to have a great eco going into Castle Age, but at least he is going to be in Castle.
Are we doing Ferimba? I mean...
Perhaps. I could see a Ferimba working out.
He got a decent
3 cattle. I don't see Grand Filani Corral.
I had this coming, yeah. I was about to say, he got a reasonable amount of food, but like he hasn't got a crazy amount from the Pro Scouts play, right? And he hasn't scaled anything.
He's playing a long game. He's definitely playing a long game here because Grand Filani Corral isn't going to give him any major buff when he only has 3 cattle.
No, but this means that Beasty maintains mid-map control in the meantime, right? And like realistically, Anotand might try to dive out with the archers, but you know, with how easily Beasty could be pumping out a few knights right now, you don't want to risk it. Like we can see Beasty has no armored units. Realistically, Anotand should be on the map. But that's the beauty of God Vision, right? Unless you have 20 scouts in your pro scout strat, you probably don't have it like we do.
Now, if Anotand gets poison arrows for these archers, his army is going to just triple in terms of quality. Same goes for the imported armor on the sofas. So Anotand is getting some critical technologies from this Castle Age up. But first, he needs to find a way to fight this. Beasty himself is late on the upgrades. The Spearman veterancy is just now coming in as the veterancy comes in for those archers from Anotand.
The relics are going heavy, though. 1 already home, 2 more coming. You look to block out the full golds here. So Anotand, yes, he gets the tech up. But watch what happens to that gold income number. It's not going to be looking pretty in a minute's time. It's going to basically half. Not a lot to work with. I mean, the archer count is at least looking good. That'll be enough to scare him away. And Beasty is now adding in those knights, but also men at arms. So everything heavy getting added into the comp.
This might be the window for Anotand to go, though, because, as you said, Beasty doesn't have any armored troops. And Spearman Archers is just not a good matchup against these Malian Archers, plus sofas with imported armor. If you're Anotand, you're looking to get some...
Right. Like, he doesn't know what we know, once again.
True.
Yeah.
Very true. Although now you see this full army here, so I think Anotand is tempted to fight this. Nice little raid from Anotand as well. If he cannot take a fight here, the sofas needs to go and raid, though.
Oh, no. Dude, Beasty's doing it to him. There's a unique tech we always forget about with my work. Well, you just make those knights as chunky as sofas. We've got the Barding coming in. It's a smart play here, right? Like, your opponent's overburdened into archers, and sofas are not going to win those trades up against heavily buffed knights. So Clash coming in. Beasty only trickling in knights right now. It's actually a pretty good fight for Anotand, but behind this, 3rd and 4th Relic are coming home. So Beasty's going to have a lot more gold to work with to get into the additional knights.
Now, if you get poison arrows, again, these archers will become a lot more viable against the knights. Spearmen are still kept alive, but this is going to be a cleanup after all, and we've seen this so many times. Malians look like they are in trouble, but passive resource income is no joke. Keep in mind, Anotand hasn't been building up cattle ever since, but he at least cleans up Beasty's forces and starts to get some map control. Beasty will have the majority of the relics, though.
But there's a problem here, right? Anotand doesn't have toxic arrows, from what I can see. No poison. So...
Yeah, no poison yet.
Yeah, so he just saw men at arms, he just saw knights.
He needs that ASAP.
Yeah, I don't think he's reacted to it right now. Like, I don't feel as if he's counterplayed. Like, Musafadi could make a lot of sense here, but he's still paranoid about the archers. Beasty... Food income, we've got to move out to boars now, right? He's on berries, so like he's definitely running a thin line here right now. You have to remember, after all, this is not your Arcan, so you don't have that efficient farm transition coming in anytime soon for HRE.
Anotand still needs to do eco damage here. It's even Steven on the villager count, but you're down 4 relics here against the HRE with Ragnitz. That is a tough ask, especially when you only have 3 cattle. If he had 20 or so cattle, we would be talking deal here. But without that, it's just so difficult. He is finding good ways to harass Beasty, though, because Beasty doesn't have any mobility right now. Just 1 knight on the field, 5 in queue. Nice
little raid there. We'll idle out the boar, so that's going to shrink Beasty's ability to deflate the knight count a little bit here. Only 2 in the field, 4 more on the way, right? So if Beasty can kind of survive the next 2 or 3 minutes, things kind of look nice, right? With 3, soon to be 4 relics, I feel like that relic is sitting somewhere not being garrisoned right now, because I'm pretty sure he's had it for a while. So missing out an extra 160 gold is no small amount. Where is he? He's definitely here somewhere. Did he garrison him in a tower by mistake? Okay, no, there we go. It's going in now. There we go. So the outpost is up. We'll be able to get the Fort Relic home. Anno is starting to get his permanent food, remember. While Beasty's running thin, Anno is slowly inflating the cows.
And remember, Beasty is losing eco now. He lost 8 villagers. Anotand does have quite some passive resource income, even without the cattle. He does have the pit mines working for him. So when you look at the overall economies, it's actually reasonably comparable right now. And Anotand has done a really good job just running circles around Beasty and leveraging the fact that Beasty is stretched out wide.
Yeah.
These sofas are still looking for targets.
I don't feel like this night barding has really hit so far, right? Like, we're kind of getting to the count where it maybe does, but the problem is now Beasty has to wall up. Because Anotand's sofas are faster. He can just anti-raid by avoiding the fight entirely. And then what? You have to mirror him? You have to waste a lot of time chasing him while he's inflating a cow count now? I'm a bit worried for Beasty.
Poison arrows are so late, though. Beasty's up to 9 knights and 8 men-at-arms, and poison arrows just now were clicked by Anotand. It takes a long time to get that tech. And I feel like Anotand, like, having delayed with poison arrows so much might have actually cost him a lot of trouble here.
I mean, I'm starting to scratch my head about the lack of Mustafadi. Like, you saw knights, you saw men-at-arms. I guess the archers are, like, a key concern, right? But you know, is there a world in which Beasty ever wants to directly contest archers and Malians? I doubt it, especially without Arkin. So, yeah, Poison Arrow is definitely going to be like an upside for Anno, but it does feel like Mustafadi also just have that complementary element of winning the fight, but also raiding well.
Now, speaking of raiding, this is a nice little cleanup here by Beasty, pushes away the sofas, and he's shifting to the north. Beasty does have at least one wall to the left that limits options for Anotand. Anotand is wide open. These knights from Beasty are looking for targets, and it's not like Anotand can afford to lose a lot of vills. Speaking of whom, though, this is a nice find by the sofas.
I mean, they're just circling around, right? Like, Beasty is in the most uncomfortable phase in the game for him. He's only walled the left side flank, even that right side, there's fake walls, they don't really exist, but suddenly Beasty, he manages to march across the field. These knights should be able to hit a lot harder. Initial charge in, gets deep, and Anotand gets cleaved down. So that's giving you, what, 6, 7, maybe even 8 villager losses, as his army is completely out of position.
That's all the eco lead Anotand had. In a blink of an eye, it was gone, and look at the reaction from Anotand. In that instant, he drops walls across the map, but it's too late now.
Look at the other reaction. He's finally going Mustafadi. Great. This is the thing that was missing. He doesn't have that widespread defense. And these knights are still there, so what happens now is Anotand has to come all the way home, right? But in the retreat, Beasty can look to jump him there as well.
Oh, man. I mean, after all those villager kills from Anotand, it looked like he was going to have a shot at this game, but now it's looking grim once again. He's trying to fall back here. He does have poison arrows, but he's still facing a pretty substantial force here. And he needs to deal with those knights roaming his base. He's falling all the way back to this gold mine. Mustafadi now on the way.
I mean, who deals with this,
It looks like
right?
he is going to stand and fight here, though.
Yeah, but like, who really deals with this well is what you have to ask the question of. The knights get sandwiched on the back, but they're insanely tanky. There's only a handful of Mustafadi in there. And the archers are cutting a lot of those ones that are coming through anyway. Look at the health bars of those few knights. They aren't dying quick enough here.
They aren't. And Beasty doubled down on the archers on the back line, and poison arrow archers aren't particularly good against normal archers here.
No. I mean, he's getting wiped.
Second wave of knights come in as well.
That's all the sofa. There's only 4 left. They have, what, 14 before? There's still 10 knights for Beasty. The archer crossbow count has barely been scratched. We're about to reach his economy, and I think we've started to reach the end of the road here for Anotand. He needs to put together a defense ASAP. Behind this, Beasty also is gathering a lot of stones, so we've now got emplacements coming in. We've got opportunities to wall. Beasty has returned to where he was when this game began, in full control.
He did. And he's just inches away from securing his ticket in the grand finals. Anotand had good moments in this game, but I feel like every single time across the series, every time he led, something went wrong. Just one raid from Beasty, and it was all gone. That is exactly what happened in here. Just one push from the Knights, all the eco lead is gone. Next thing you know, Beasty is going to dive his base, and now things look precarious. The cattles are there, but now Beasty has the eco lead, and Beasty's doubling down on the Knights. Anotand still has a respectable force, though, but Beasty feels like there is no urgency here. He has 4 relics, he's got all the map control. He does not need to rush anymore.
And keep in mind, Beasty doesn't have that, oh, when are we adding the farms moment, right? He already added a decent amount around where he was gathering berries before. But the problem I'm seeing here for Anotand is like these knights are unanswered. They will remain unanswered at this rate. Like, you want to go Donzos, but you still have to deal with the archers your opponent has, right? So what option does that really leave you as Anno? Maybe Mangonels and then Musafadi / Donzo? Does he even have the wood for that? Because I'm seeing a man who is struggling to find safe wood.
Yeah, he's got only 200 wood per minute. He actually shifted 42 villagers on wood. He's got this one tree line to the left side that he's trying to still work with.
He's a woodpecker looking for a new home in a deforested jungle. Like, that's the problem right now, right? Like, everyone is front-facing. If Beasty rotates west side, it's pretty much curtains.
And Beasty's doubling down on the archers. If you have the poison arrow archers from the Malians, the only thing that you don't want to fight one-on-one against is archers. It's just not a good trade. And now Beasty's getting all the blacksmith upgrades in there. His eco has been untouched for a while. He's got a lot of extra gold from the relics as well. And look at the knight count. We're talking about 17, 18.
I mean, your villagers can run, right? But,
yeah, but your cattle can't.
Exactly. If there's anything we've learned from our observers, that cows just like to sit there and not move. So these ones are going to be going down in a similar fashion. Now, the raids are going to be diving deeper. We already talked about the stack defenses to protect him. He needs to find some worker kills to feel really comfortable about this trade right now. But for the time being, taking out all of the cows has pretty much removed all of the income for Anotand.
Anotand looks like he needs to fight this. Even if he cleans this up, though, the eco damage is pretty substantial. He is finding villager kills on the back line, though. And remember, we've seen Anotand come back from precarious positions before. All it takes is one good raid. This one is pretty solid, but he needs more out of this game. He needs to clean this force up in front of his base.
Well, this could be a good fight. Beasty's a little bit distracted in the retreat. He needs to clear up the raid and then get all of his troops to the front side. That's how he'd be favored here. But right now, a little bit discombobulated, right? About 20 of his units chilling in the base. So Anotand, he does survive. Someone who didn't survive, though, if you look at the Fulani, is Bessie. Bessie Mark II. Bessie Mark III. Bessie Mark... This is literally a full eulogy. Brandon. Marie. Marie 1. Marie... Sorry, I don't have many cow names. We just kind of repeat them.
I hope you like burgers, though. Like, let's be honest. You could drop a Texas Roadhouse right next to that one spot.
Yeah, you just need to run outside real quick and make sure you salt all the steak on the floor so it doesn't, you know, go off.
Anyway, I'm wondering if Beasty's thinking about imping here. I think he's waiting for an Anotand push, but if Anotand doesn't push him, he would just go Imperial with the Burgrave Palace. Looks like Anotand is looking for something here, though. He's diving deep. He's gonna be in no man's land with this army, though, so there's gonna be no way home if he overcommits.
Anotand, I mean, there's a clear reluctance here, right? Like, what is BC up to? Could there be a tech play behind this, or is he reinvesting? If it's a tech play, I could dive him. If he's reinvesting, I'm in trouble, because Anotand, he knows better than we would. He still doesn't have a solid answer to Mass Knights. It's 23, soon to be 30. Beasty is pretty much whipping out a more tanky version of a French knight strategy here. They are that chunky. Like, you have to think of the Bard armor for what it is, Lidicor. It's basically English armor clad, only for knights.
Anotand does have 75 archers here, and they do have the poison arrows upgrade, but it's not your direct armor-piercing power that you're looking for. Beasty's looking to probe this position, Anotand getting the walls going. This is so annoying for Anotand to deal with. Having to chase 3 knights with his whole army is just so problematic. Beasty is going to leverage that for an even better map position. Anotand is looking to contest this, though.
He's going to march up. Back up to 9 cows garrisoned. So, you know, there's less corners in the neighborhood for McDonald's to set up on. There's more permanence, a little bit more dairy supply. However, the person getting milked here seems to be Anotand. Beasty. This is a pristine fight to take. The Knights dive in. It's going to be a flood forward here. Start step retreat, but there's no doubt about it. How many Knights? It's not going to be dying anytime soon. The archers, however, are melting.
There is no front line here for Anotand. No Danzos, no Musafadi whatsoever, and archers are so fragile. Poison arrows take time to take an effect on these knights, and it's just not coming together for Anotand. it looks like we are heading towards a rematch of a previous matchup in this tournament. Beasty looking to challenge Marine Lord in the grand finals.
It feels like at the decisive moments, those 3 knights peeling off the west side, they chased in onto the gold vein, so Anotand now getting idled out there. And now it's going to turn into a divide and conquer, a full smusher. You talked about burgers earlier. Well, here's the meat and here's the bun. Gets him from both sides. Still has the military lead. And what does he do? He peels off to look for the villager crew. Back across onto the farms because he knows he has to be eating the beef.
Oh, that's such a good game sense out there. You have to do something with those dead cows. And Beasty is just going to jump them out there. Anotand hasn't yet started cleaning up these guys out here. Villagers will flee all the way to the north. It's not just the kills, it's the idle time as well. And behind this, there is a second wave of knights on the way.
And the mango's falling up as well. I mean, Anotand's still got 38 archers. That's going to be painful. Not many things to flank with. The only thing really keeping Anotand alive is that Beasty's archers didn't put their spectacles on this morning. They didn't quite see which direction their opponent went in. But there's really a lack of places to hide at this stage, right? It's always been that west side we've been waiting for Beasty to dive onto. He tried a little bit in the last engagement, but hasn't fully committed there. It feels like he's just going the meat grinder route about this. Take down Anotand's army piece by piece, and along the way, maybe occasionally take down one of these beef gatherers.
So much idle time here for Anotand as well, and Anotand is back to 20 cattle. I think that's going to be down to 5 in just a few moments. Beasty's got 18 knights, and he's not going to shy away from just standing under the TC, taking out those cattle ranches once again. Rams are now on the way, and Anotand once again will not have a massive front line for his force. It's archers, very, very squishy, easy to kill, and knights will just ignore them altogether. It's the mangonels keeping them at bay.
I mean, your own base is like a tomb, right? You just get choked together, which means mangoes are better. He even went siege engineering just a minute ago to get the Rams prepped for this, so Beasty knew what this was going to turn into. He's like, if I can't find the economy, I'll just find the thing that can't move. But first it was cows, and now it's production. Anotand's really on the ropes here, looking for some sort of uppercut jab, but as long as the knight count remains along 20 plus, it's hard to see the way.
It is hard, and Beasty now knows that this game is going to be over in the next few minutes, no matter what. He's just trickling forces across the map at this point. No intent to go up to Imperial. He just wants to finish this game right here, right now, because he's got so much momentum.
And momentum is going to be an important subject for those grand finals. Some players struggle coming through like this, revealing strategies to a player like Marine Lord. Others thrive off the fact that their fingers are warmed and the morale is high. And I imagine Beasty has to be feeling exactly that way with a 4-1 victory. Anotand truly on his last stand here as the fight has moved across the tree lines of the gold. There's already knights rotating onto the woodcutters. He's losing villagers as we speak. And he can't even react to it because this army is too big.
Mangonels just keeping all these archers at bay, and there is just not enough sofas to deal with this. Sofas will fall so quick. Mangonels just rain death on those archers, and knights, they still reign supreme. The knight count from Beasty never dropped. It's still 17, 18, 20, and he's got more in queue.
Without mine work. Without Arkham, this is mine work. Remember that. This is mine work. You don't need the buff of the farms. You've got prelates running around, blessing all the villagers who work in the fields. And Anotand will be blessed no deeper. It is a top 3 finish. It is still an all-time best performance for Anotand in S-tier tournaments, but he will not make it to the grand finals. It will be the classic, the most overdone, the most frequently occurring of finals, it feels like. Beasty versus Marine Lord, locked in.
A great show, though, from Anotand. You really gotta give him credit. The last 2 games didn't do justice for him, I feel. But he had a really strong showing in the first portion of this series. He took a game away from Beasty, and there were some other moments where it felt like, okay, this could be a very tightly contested series, but I feel like Beasty got warmed up and really, we talked about this, KP. Anotand defeated Beasty in tournaments before, but when really all the spotlights are on you, and you are on the main stage, big event, big series, can you deliver? I think Beasty's experience in all these events before really showed in this series, and I think he also showed why he's one of the best players out there. When it matters the most, he's able to deliver clean gameplay.
Yeah, And the thing is that I think this is a more threatening beast than we were seeing maybe just a few weeks ago. Getting back in the grind, getting back in the scrims, right? I mean, admittedly, there's been a line, I think, the last 2 days at least, right? Like, usually that's weird for Beasty. You expect him to be there every day, but he's taking the scrim seriously. He wants to hide his strategies. And I think it is starting to pay off. I think it's hard to be a content creator and be a top-level pro. I'm sure Beasty will agree with that because you kind of feel like you're revealing your strats. You also end up in a situation, I talked to Marino about this before, where he doesn't want to scrim with those guys. It's not that they're not talented players, it's that he'll scrim with them and then they'll show the strategy on stream the next day, right? So it's a hard place to be in. It's a hard way to balance, but I think Beasty is finding a way to make it work on both ends, and that's important here, especially if he wants to stand a chance against the reigning GOAT of Age of Empires 4.
Oh man, this is gonna be a big one. I just checked the series count. Is this actually correct? Okay, there we go. 26 combined competitive series, more than 110 combined competitive games against one another.
Oh, so they occasionally face off against each other, then, is what you're saying?
Yes, you could say that.
I've been known to clash, get in the ring a little bit. So yeah, like 19 wins, 7 losses from Greenlord, though, right? Like a pretty dominant win rate there, 73%. Collectively, the game count between these two across all series is, and that's not series count, game count, is sitting at 114 games played, which is bonkers.
It is bonkers. It's so crazy to think how far we've come. And I think you have to put these numbers into some context, KP. When you look at some other matchups, like, let's say, Louis MT versus Anotand, we're talking about 1 or 2 matchups in history between those two players. So to say that any 2 players played against each other 26 times in competitive series is absolutely unreal.
You know what's even more unreal is Beasty a few days ago, he got sent some stats based on the main event so far in EGC, and it was to do with like walling, right? And here's an interesting thought for you: like Beasty and Marine Lord are in the bottom 4 for walling out of like the top, I think it was 16 players, all the players in the event, right? So kind of interested to think about there, because also in this game, I feel like Beasty wasn't rushing to wall in most games, right? He was actually just trying to play aggressive. We're in a meta right now where even with the pro scouts to provide that safety to hunker down, the focus is still on just trying to be optimal, not wall, play aggressive, play fast, control the game, control the map. And I think that's promising, really. You know, like Beasty, in that type of meta, being the classic defensively oriented turtle could be a huge disadvantage. You need to be leveraging that pressure. What's interesting, though, is Marine Lord is a player who's always lived on the philosophy that he wants a small percentile advantage to scale into a big. Will this be the meta where that still reigns supreme, as it often has for the GOAT of AoE4? Or will it be a negative element to gameplay in this particular finals?